He thought it was just one small act of kindness, defending a woman who looked like life had already beaten her down. But behind her tired smile lies a secret life, and nothing is as it seems. She isn't just struggling to survive. She's hiding a past tied to wealth, shame, and a father who disowned her. He wanted to believe in second chances, but every truth he uncovers makes him question, is she really desperate or dangerously proud? And when a child's life hangs in the balance, the question is no longer about charity. It's about love, loyalty, and the courage to forgive. Can this broken soldier and a wounded waitress find redemption together? Or will pride destroy the only chance at healing they both have left? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Jack Turner drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, watching the autumn leaves dance across Main Street as his old pickup idled at a red light. The day's work at the repair shop had left grease stains on his weathered hands that even vigorous scrubbing couldn't completely remove. "Come on, Dad," Sarah pleaded from the passenger seat, her blue eyes twinkling with that look he could never quite resist. "We haven't been to Miller's in forever. Their meatloaf is the best in town." Jack sighed, feeling the familiar tug between wanting to make his daughter happy and avoiding public places that stirred memories of Carolyn, his late wife. They used to come here as a family every Friday night. "I don't know, sweetheart. There are leftovers at home and—" "Dad." Sarah's voice took on that gentle, knowing tone that made her sound so much like her mother. "It's been 3 years. Mom would want us to keep living, you know." Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. Sometimes his daughter's wisdom caught him off guard, making his heart ache with pride and loss all at once. "When did you get so smart, kiddo?" "Must be those vegetables you make me eat," she quipped, grinning. The light turned green, and Jack found himself turning into Miller's parking lot instead of heading home. The neon sign buzzed softly in the growing dusk, casting a warm glow across the pavement. Through the windows, he could see the familiar red vinyl booths and chrome fixtures that hadn't changed in 20 years. "Yes!" Sarah bounced in her seat as they parked. "You're the best, Dad!" Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and grilled onions. A bell chimed above the door as they entered, and Sarah immediately headed for their old favorite booth by the window. Jack followed more slowly, his boots heavy on the checkered floor. They had just settled in when angry voices from the counter caught their attention. A man in an expensive suit was standing, his face red with anger, while a waitress tried to maintain her composure. "This is absolutely unacceptable," the man bellowed, holding up his coffee cup. "I specifically asked for soy milk, and this is clearly regular cream. Are you completely incompetent?" The waitress, her name tag read Emily, stood straight back despite her obvious exhaustion. Dark circles under her eyes suggested long hours, but there was a quiet dignity in how she held herself. "I'm so sorry for the mistake, sir," Emily said softly, reaching for the cup. "I'll remake it right away. Sorry, doesn't cut it." The man's voice rose higher, drawing stares from other customers. "Do you have any idea who I am? I could buy this whole dump 10 times over." Jack watched as Emily's cheeks flushed, but she maintained her professional demeanor. There was something in her eyes, though, a flash of hurt pride quickly masked, that stirred something in him. She reminded him of Caroline in that moment, the way she'd faced challenges with quiet strength. Sarah tugged at his sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, her expression troubled. "Someone should do something." The man was still ranting, his voice getting louder. "Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time paying attention—" "Excuse me." Jack's chair scraped back as he stood, his voice carrying clearly across the diner. Heads turned as he walked to the counter, his movements unhurried but purposeful. The angry customer turned, sizing Jack up with a dismissive glance at his work clothes and grease-stained hands. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," Jack replied calmly. "You see, this is a public place where folks come to enjoy their meals in peace." The lady apologized and offered to fix your drink. "There's no call for making a scene." Emily stood very still, her eyes moving between Jack and the angry customer. There was something guarded in her expression now, as if she wasn't sure whether to be grateful or worried about this intervention. "Do you know who I am?" the man demanded, puffing up his chest. "Someone who's forgotten their manners, from what I can see," Jack answered, his tone remaining steady. He wasn't a particularly large man, but there was something in his bearing, perhaps from his military years, that carried natural authority. The man's face reddened further, but something in Jack's calm demeanor made him hesitate. After a moment, he grabbed his briefcase. "This place isn't worth my time anyway," he muttered, storming toward the door. The bell chimed again as he left, and the diner slowly returned to its normal atmosphere of quiet conversation and clinking silverware. Jack turned to Emily, who was still standing very straight, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Emily's eyes met his briefly before darting away. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. There was gratitude in her expression, but also something else, a wariness, as if she wasn't used to accepting help from strangers. "But I could have handled it." From their booth, Sarah watched the exchange with undisguised admiration, a small smile playing on her lips as she observed her father's quiet intervention. The moment hung between them all, delicate as spun glass, before Emily turned away to attend to other customers, her movements precise and controlled, her dignity intact but her eyes still holding that mixture of gratitude and guardedness. The fluorescent lights of Miller's Diner cast a harsh glow over the worn vinyl booths and chrome fixtures. Jack settled into their usual corner spot, his daughter Sarah sliding in across from him with the boundless energy only teenagers seem to possess. The familiar scent of coffee and grilled onions filled the air, mixing with the lingering sweetness of fresh-baked apple pie. Through the kitchen window, the cook's spatula clinked against the griddle in a steady rhythm. Jack's eyes drifted to Emily, their waitress, as she balanced 3 plates along her arm with practiced grace. Her uniform, once crisp and white, had faded to a tired shade of cream, with a small tear carefully mended near the hem. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, partially hidden beneath carefully applied makeup. "Here's your coffee, Black," Emily said, setting the mug down in front of Jack. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her order pad. "And for you, Sarah? Still loving those chocolate milkshakes?" Sarah's face lit up. "You remembered. Yes, please. And can we get some of those crispy onion rings too?" "Coming right up." Emily's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but there was genuine warmth in her voice. As she turned to leave, Jack noticed how her shoes were worn at the edges, the once white laces now gray with age. "Busy night?" Jack asked gently. Emily tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, you know how it gets. Thursday's meatloaf special always draws a crowd." She attempted a light laugh, but exhaustion crept into her voice. "Dad's been super busy too," Sarah chimed in. "He fixed 3 tractors today. Though honestly, I think he just likes getting covered in grease." She wrinkled her nose playfully. This time, Emily's smile was genuine. "A regular mechanical wizard, huh? More like a grease monkey," Sarah giggled. "You should see him trying to get those stains out of his shirts. It's like watching a comedy show." "Hey now," Jack protested, but he was smiling too. The tension in Emily's shoulders seemed to ease a bit as she watched their exchange. "At least grease washes out eventually," Emily said, her eyes twinkling. "Unlike the coffee stains on this uniform, I swear they're permanent residents now." A crash from the kitchen made Emily jump. "Oh, I better check on that order. Be right back with your milkshake, Sarah." As she hurried away, Jack noticed how she favored her left foot slightly. The long hours of waiting tables had clearly taken their toll. Throughout their meal, he watched as Emily maintained her professional demeanor despite the growing weariness in her movements. She never complained, even when a customer sent back their order twice. Sarah stirred the last of her milkshake with her straw. "She's really nice, isn't she, Dad? Even when people are being jerks." Jack nodded, thinking about the quiet dignity Emily carried herself with, despite her obvious fatigue. "Some people have a strength that doesn't show on the surface," he said softly. When Emily brought their check, her hands were shaking more noticeably. She'd tied her apron tighter, trying to hide a fresh coffee stain on her uniform. "Thank you for coming in," she said, her voice carrying the automatic cheerfulness of someone who'd said the same words hundreds of times before. "The meatloaf was amazing as always," Sarah declared. "Way better than Dad's cooking." "Watch it, kiddo." Jack chuckled, reaching for his wallet. Emily's tired face brightened at Sarah's enthusiasm. "You're sweet to say that. I'll tell Joe in the kitchen. He loves hearing compliments about his meatloaf." As they prepared to leave, Emily rushed to clear their table, her movements becoming more hurried. The dinner rush was picking up, and new customers were streaming in. In her haste to get to another table, she practically ran to the kitchen, leaving behind a small wallet on the counter near the register. "Emily, wait!" Jack called out, but she had already disappeared through the swinging kitchen doors. He picked up the worn leather wallet, its edges frayed and soft from years of use. As he turned to follow Emily to return it, something slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Sarah bent down to retrieve it. "Dad, look," she said quietly, holding up a slightly creased photograph. The image showed Emily, her face younger and more carefree, holding a little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. They were sitting on a park bench, autumn leaves scattered around their feet. The little girl's face was pressed close to Emily's, both of them laughing at some shared joke lost to time. Jack stared at the photo, something tugging at his heart. The Emily in the picture looked so different from the tired waitress they'd just seen. There was a lightness to her expression, an unguarded joy that seemed worlds away from the careful mask she wore now. "Dad?" Sarah's voice brought him back to the present. "We should return it to her." Jack carefully slipped the photo back into the wallet, noting how the leather was worn smooth in places, like it had been worried by anxious fingers countless times. The inside was neat but sparse. A few carefully folded bills, a bus pass, and what looked like a carefully preserved children's drawing. "She's still busy with customers," he said, watching Emily hurry between tables. "We'll come back tomorrow to return it. She probably won't even notice it's missing until her shift ends." Sarah gathered her jacket, glancing back at Emily one more time. "I hope she's okay, Dad. She seems so tired." Jack pocketed the wallet carefully, making sure it was secure. "Sometimes life gets heavy, sweetheart, but people are stronger than they look." They made their way to the door, the bell jingling above them as they stepped out into the cool evening air. Through the window, they could see Emily continuing her rounds, carrying plates and coffee pots, her smile never wavering despite the weariness in her steps. The photo slipped from the worn leather wallet, landing face up on the scratched Formica tabletop. Jack's breath caught as he studied the image, a little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile, wrapped in Emily's protective embrace. The resemblance to his late wife Mary at that age was startling, right down to the dimple in her left cheek. "Dad?" Sarah's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She leaned forward, peering at the photo. "Is that Emily's daughter? She's so cute." "Seems so," Jack replied softly, carefully tucking the picture back into its place. As he did, several folded papers caught his attention. He hesitated, his conscience warring with concern. These were private matters, but something about Emily's tired eyes and brave facade tugged at him. With careful fingers, he unfolded the first slip, a grocery store receipt marked "Past Due" in bold red letters. The amount made his chest tighten, $247.83. The second paper was a notice from the electric company, threatening disconnection. Between the two bills, it was clear Emily was drowning. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, noting her father's furrowed brow. Jack quickly refolded the papers, sliding them back into the wallet. "Just thinking, sweetheart." He glanced toward the counter where Emily was refilling salt shakers, her movements mechanical with exhaustion. The determined set of her shoulders reminded him of himself in those first difficult years after Mary's passing, too proud to accept help, trying to carry the weight alone. "Ready to head home?" he asked Sarah, pulling out his wallet to leave payment for their pie. He added a generous tip, remembering Emily's trembling hands. The drive home was quiet, with Sarah dozing against the window and Jack's mind churning over what he'd seen. The street lights cast intermittent shadows across the dashboard as he navigated the familiar roads of their small town. He thought about Mary, about how she'd always said that honor wasn't just about standing up to bullies, it was about helping others maintain their dignity. That night, after Sarah had gone to bed, Jack sat at his kitchen table with a cup of cooling coffee. Emily's wallet lay before him like a puzzle needing to be solved. He knew the feeling of desperate pride all too well, how it could become both armor and prison. After Mary died, he'd nearly lost the repair shop, refusing help from well-meaning neighbors who saw his struggle. It had been old Joe Miller, Mary's father, who'd taught him the hardest lesson about pride. "Sometimes," Joe had said, "the most honorable thing you can do is let someone help you without making a fuss about it." The memory brought a sad smile to Jack's face. Making his decision, Jack checked his own wallet. The repair shop had done well this month, enough to spare what was needed. He'd have to be careful about it, though. Emily's fierce independence was clear in every line of her bearing. Direct charity would only wound her pride further. The next morning, Jack rose earlier than usual, leaving Sarah a note about running errands before work. The sun was just beginning to paint the sky in soft pinks and golds as he pulled into the parking lot of Henderson's grocery. The store had been a fixture in town for 3 generations, and Tom Henderson himself was already unlocking the front doors. "Jack Turner! You're out early," Tom called in greeting, his round face creased in a welcoming smile. "Morning, Tom." Jack followed him inside, breathing in the familiar scent of fresh produce and floor cleaner. "Need to take care of something before the day gets going." At the service counter, Jack cleared his throat. "Tom, you know that waitress from Miller's? Emily?" "Sure do. Sweet girl. Works hard. Been having some trouble keeping up with her account, though." Tom's voice held no judgment, just concern. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Jack pulled out his wallet, extracting several crisp bills. "I'd like to clear her balance, but—" He held Tom's gaze steadily. "I need this to stay between us." Tom's eyes softened with understanding. Anonymous payment on account. Not the first time it's happened. He took the money, efficiently recording the transaction. "You're a good man, Jack Turner." "Not good," Jack corrected quietly. "Just been where she is, that's all." He thought of Emily's daughter, of the pride that kept Emily working long hours rather than accepting handouts. Sometimes folks just need a little breathing room to get back on their feet. As Tom finished processing the payment, Jack added, "If she asks, just tell her there was an anonymous donation to clear overdue accounts. Nothing more." Tom nodded, his eyes twinkling. Banking error in her favor. Like that Monopoly card. Got it. The morning sun had fully risen as Jack stepped back outside, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The weight of Emily's wallet was still heavy in his jacket pocket, but his heart felt lighter. Sometimes, he reflected, honor wasn't about grand gestures or public stands. Sometimes it was about quiet acts of kindness, done without expectation or recognition. Later that day, he would find a way to return the wallet to Miller's diner, maybe leave it with the hostess or another server. Emily would never know about his intervention at the grocery store. That was exactly how it should be. Jack drummed his fingers on the steering wheel as he pulled into Miller's diner the next evening. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered under the flickering neon sign. His heart thumped a little harder as he spotted Emily through the window, wiping down tables in the dim light. He patted the wallet in his jacket pocket and took a deep breath. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside, and Emily looked up, her expression shifting from professional courtesy to recognition. "Mr. Turner," she said, straightening up and tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "Jack," he corrected gently, "and I believe this belongs to you." He pulled out the wallet and held it out. Emily's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her apron pocket where the wallet should have been.
"Oh, I've been looking everywhere for that."
She reached for it but hesitated.
"Did you look inside?"
"Only to find out whose it was," Jack said, though the lie felt heavy on his tongue.
There was a photo.
Emily's cheeks flushed as she took the wallet, clutching it close. "That's my daughter, Lily." Her voice softened at the name. "She's everything to me." Jack nodded, understanding that kind of love all too well.
"Sarah's my whole world, too."
He cleared his throat.
"Listen, about the grocery store."
"I know what you did," Emily cut in, her voice tight. She glanced around the empty diner before continuing in a lower tone. "Mrs. Henderson at the market told me this morning. I can't accept that kind of charity, Mr. Turner, Jack. I'll pay you back every cent." "It's not charity," Jack said quietly, meeting her defensive gaze. "Where I come from, it's called respect." Emily's shoulders tensed. Respect? For a mother working hard to take care of her child. For someone who keeps their dignity, even when others try to take it away. He thought of the rude customer from the other night. That takes real strength. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her cleaning rag.
"You don't know anything about me."
"I know enough," Jack replied. "I know what it's like to raise a child alone. To worry if you're doing right by them. To want to be both mother and father, and feeling like you're failing at both." Something in Emily's expression cracked, just a little. She sank into the nearest booth, and after a moment's hesitation, Jack sat across from her. "Lily's father," she began, then shook her head. "It's complicated, but I've managed on my own. I have to." "Nobody has to do everything alone," Jack said. "Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom." Emily's laugh was soft and bitter. "Is that what they taught you in the military?" Jack touched the edge of his sleeve where his service pins usually sat. Actually, yes. A good soldier knows when to rely on his team. Trying to be a lone hero usually gets you killed. This isn't war, Mr. Turner. No, he agreed. But raising kids alone? Sometimes it feels like it. That earned him a genuine smile. Small, but real. Emily's shoulders relaxed slightly. Lily asked about you, you know. She saw you standing up to that customer the other night. Called you a knight in shining armor. Jack felt his ears grow warm. More like a mechanic in oil-stained overalls. You didn't have to do that. Or the grocery bill. Emily's voice grew serious again. I'm not used to. People don't usually. Help without wanting something in return? Jack finished gently. Emily nodded, looking down at her hands. Well, maybe it's time to get used to it. This town, we look out for each other here. No strings attached. I'm learning that, Emily said softly. She straightened suddenly, professional mask sliding back into place. I should get back to work, but thank you. For the wallet. And everything else. Jack stood, understanding the conversation was over. You're welcome. And Emily? He waited until she looked at him. If you ever need anything car trouble, leaky faucet, whatever, my shop's just down the street. I'll keep that in mind, she said, and this time her smile reached her eyes. As Jack walked back to his truck, the evening air felt lighter somehow. He thought of all the medals and commendations gathering dust in his drawer at home, acknowledgments of courage under fire, of lives saved in combat. But this simple act of kindness, this small bridge built between two struggling parents, felt more meaningful than all of them. He started the engine, catching one last glimpse of Emily through the diner window. She was back at work, but her step seemed lighter, her shoulders straighter. Sometimes, the biggest victories, Jack realized, were the quiet ones that nobody else saw. The truck's headlights cut through the growing darkness as he headed home, and for the first time in a long while, the empty passenger seat beside him didn't feel quite so lonely. The bell above the diner door chimed as Jack and Sarah walked in. The aroma of fresh coffee and baking pies filled the air. Sarah's eyes lit up when she spotted a small girl, around 6 years old, sitting in one of the corner booths with crayons spread across the table. Dad, look how cute she is, Sarah whispered, tugging at Jack's sleeve. The little girl had Emily's honey, blonde hair, twisted into two slightly messy braids. Emily appeared from behind the counter, coffee pot in hand. Her cheeks flushed when she saw them. Oh, hello, she said softly, clearly still uncomfortable about the grocery store situation. The little girl's head popped up. Mommy, can I have more apple juice? In a minute, sweetie. Emily's voice carried a gentleness Jack hadn't heard before. I need to take care of these customers first. Actually, Sarah piped up, would it be okay if I sat with her while you guys talk? I love coloring. She gave her dad a meaningful look that made Jack want to chuckle. His daughter wasn't exactly subtle with her matchmaking attempts. Emily hesitated, her protective instincts visible in the way she glanced between her daughter and Sarah. The little girl made the decision for her, waving enthusiastically at Sarah. I'm Lily. Do you want to help me color my unicorn? Sarah's face broke into a warm smile. I would love to. I'm Sarah. She slid into the booth across from Lily, and within seconds, the two were deep in conversation about the proper colors for unicorn manes. Jack watched as Emily's shoulders relaxed slightly. Your daughter has a kind heart, she said, leading him to a nearby table where he could keep an eye on the girls. She does. Takes after her mother that way. Jack's voice held a hint of old grief, but mostly pride. Lily seems like a sweetheart, too. Emily poured him a cup of coffee, her movements precise but less guarded than before. She is. Sometimes I think she's the only thing keeping me going. The words seemed to slip out before she could catch them, and she quickly added, Can I get you anything else? From the corner booth, Lily's giggle rang out as Sarah showed her how to draw stars around the unicorn. The sound made both parents turn to look, and Jack caught the flash of fierce love in Emily's eyes. Mommy, Lily called out. Sarah knows how to make paper cranes. Can she teach me? Emily's face softened. Not right now, honey. Sarah and her dad probably need to eat dinner. Actually, Jack said, we're not in any hurry. If it's okay with you, of course. For a moment, Emily seemed to wage an internal battle. Her instinct to keep her distance warred visibly with Lily's obvious delight in Sarah's company. Finally, she nodded. I suppose a few paper cranes wouldn't hurt. Jack watched as Sarah carefully showed Lily how to fold a napkin into precise triangles. His daughter's patience reminded him so much of her mother. The same gentle way of explaining, the same encouraging smile, when Lily's first attempt came out looking more like a crumpled ball than a bird. "She's good with kids," Emily observed, refilling Jack's coffee without him asking. "She helps with the elementary school theater program," Jack explained. "Volunteering there helped her after." He trailed off, but Emily seemed to understand. The next hour passed in a comfortable rhythm. The diner was quiet enough that Emily could take breaks between customers to check on Lily. Each time she passed, Jack noticed how her defenses lowered a little more. She even laughed when Lily proudly presented her with a slightly lopsided paper crane. "Look, Mommy, it's just like the ones in my book. It's beautiful, sweetheart." Emily tucked the paper crane into her apron pocket, with the care usually reserved for precious gems. The peaceful moment was interrupted by the arrival of the mailman. A thin man in a blue uniform who seemed to know Emily. He approached the counter with an envelope in hand, glancing around before speaking to her in low tones. Jack wouldn't have noticed anything unusual if not for the sudden change in Emily's demeanor. Her spine stiffened, and the warm expression she'd worn while watching the girls vanished. She took the envelope quickly, almost snatching it, and stuffed it into her apron alongside Lily's paper crane. "Thank you, Tom," she said curtly, turning away before the mailman could respond. The transformation was striking. The Emily who had been gradually warming up all evening disappeared behind a wall of forced politeness. She moved between tables with mechanical efficiency, no longer stopping to chat or check on the girls. Jack found himself watching her more closely, noting how she kept one hand pressed against her apron pocket, as if ensuring the envelope was still there. Whatever was in that envelope had the power to turn the gentle, caring mother he'd been getting to know back into the guarded woman who'd insisted she didn't need charity. Lily's voice cut through his observations. "Mommy, can Sarah come back tomorrow? She promised to teach me how to make a paper butterfly." Emily's face did something complicated, a mix of love for her daughter and that same guardedness that had returned with the envelope. "We'll see, sweetie. Sarah and Mr. Turner probably have other plans." "Actually," Sarah said, "I'm free after school tomorrow, if that's okay with you and Dad." Jack recognized the hopeful look in his daughter's eyes. It had been a long time since she'd connected with someone like this. He nodded his approval, but kept his attention on Emily, waiting to see how she would handle this gentle pressure against her walls. Before Emily could respond, the bell above the door chimed again, announcing new customers. "I need to take care of that," she said, the envelope crinkling in her pocket as she hurried away. The morning sunlight streamed through the diner's windows, casting warm patches across the checkered floor. Jack watched as Sarah made her way to Lily's booth, her natural warmth drawing an immediate smile from the little girl. "I'm Sarah," his daughter said, sliding into the seat across from Lily. "I love your drawings. Are those butterflies?" Lily nodded shyly, pushing a crayon across the paper. "They're magical ones. See the sparkles?" Emily approached their table, her shoulders tense despite her friendly smile. "Can I get you both something to eat?" "Pancakes," Sarah answered immediately. "With extra whipped cream, please?" Jack couldn't help but notice how Emily's uniform seemed newer today, less frayed than before. Her shoes, too, looked recently purchased, simple but good quality. Something didn't quite add up with the image of struggling single mother she portrayed. "Just coffee and eggs for me," Jack said, studying Emily's face. She avoided his gaze, scribbling their order on her notepad. As Emily walked away, Sarah leaned over to Lily's table. "Can I color with you?" Lily's face brightened, and she pushed some crayons toward Sarah. Jack watched the easy interaction between the girls, his heart warming at his daughter's kindness, but his eyes kept drifting to Emily as she moved behind the counter, particularly when the mailman entered through the side door. Emily's entire demeanor changed when she saw him. She quickly stepped away from the coffee maker, meeting the mailman halfway. There was a brief exchange, too quiet for Jack to hear, and then an envelope passed between them. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she tucked it into her apron pocket. The rest of their breakfast passed pleasantly enough, with Sarah and Lily chattering about school and favorite colors. But Jack couldn't shake the growing unease in his gut. He'd seen enough in his years of military service to recognize when something wasn't quite right. Later that afternoon, as they drove home from their father-daughter day at the local fair, Sarah noticed his quietness. "Dad, you've got that worried wrinkle between your eyebrows again." Jack glanced at his perceptive daughter. "Just Thinking. About Emily? Sarah's tone was knowing. You've been weird ever since breakfast. Something doesn't add up, honey. The new uniform, those shoes, and that envelope from the mailman. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. I've seen people play on others' sympathy before. Sarah sat up straighter in her seat. Dad, stop. Emily's not like that. You don't know that, Sarah. We barely know her. I know she works hard. I know Lily adores her. Sarah's voice took on that stubborn tone she'd inherited from her mother. And I know she reminded me of you when Mom died. Jack's hands loosened slightly on the wheel. What do you mean? Remember how you wouldn't let anyone help us? How you worked double shifts at the shop and insisted we were just fine when people offered support? Sarah's words hit home. Emily's proud, Dad, like you. The comparison made Jack uncomfortable, mainly because it rang true. He remembered those dark days after losing Claire, how accepting help had felt like admitting defeat. Maybe, he conceded, but that doesn't explain the envelope or why she seems to be hiding something. So, ask her, Sarah said simply. But Dad, be nice about it. Lily talks about how other kids make fun of her for having just a mom. Maybe Emily's just trying to protect her daughter, like you protected me. Jack mulled over Sarah's words through dinner and into the evening. As he sat in his workshop later, tinkering with an old radio, he thought about Emily's fierce independence, her reluctance to accept help, the way she held herself like someone carrying a heavy weight. The next morning, after dropping Sarah at school, he made a decision. He'd confront Emily, not with accusations, but with understanding. If she was hiding something, maybe there was a reason beyond simple deception. He pulled into the diner's parking lot just as the morning rush was ending. Emily was wiping down tables, her movements efficient but tired. When the bell announced his entrance, she looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Jack, you're early today. She glanced at the clock. Usually don't see you until evening. He took a deep breath, remembering Sarah's words about pride and protection. The same qualities he'd relied on after losing Claire. Whatever Emily's story was, he owed it to both of them to approach this with compassion rather than suspicion. Emily, he said quietly, I think we need to talk. Jack watched his daughter and Lily interact, their easy laughter a stark contrast to the weight in his chest. The envelope he'd seen Emily receive earlier nagged at his thoughts. Something didn't add up about her situation, and his military training had taught him to trust his instincts. Coffee's fresh, Emily said, refilling his cup with practiced efficiency. Her hands were steady now, unlike that first night when the rude customer had rattled her. Emily, Jack began carefully, keeping his voice low. Could we talk for a minute? When you have time. She glanced around the nearly empty diner, then nodded. My break's in 5 minutes. Why don't you join me out back? The back of the diner opened onto a small concrete pad with 2 metal chairs. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Emily sat down, wrapping her arms around herself, against the chill. What's on your mind, Jack? She asked, but her tone suggested she already knew. I saw you receive an envelope yesterday, he said directly, watching her face. And I couldn't help but overhear you telling Jenny you're barely making ends meet. Emily's face flushed, her fingers tightening around her arms. You're watching me now? No, Jack paused, choosing his words carefully. I just want to understand. If you're in trouble, I want to help, but I need to know the truth. The truth? Emily's laugh was bitter, nothing like her usual warm chuckle. The truth is complicated, Jack, and honestly, it's none of your business. Maybe not, he agreed, his voice gentle but firm. But when someone I care about seems to be living 2 different stories, I get concerned. Emily stood abruptly, pacing the small space. Her uniform swished with each turn, and Jack could see the internal battle playing across her face. Fine, she finally said, her voice tight. You want the truth? That envelope was from my father, Richard Montgomery. Yes, those Montgomerys. Jack's eyebrows rose. The Montgomery family owned half the businesses in town, their name emblazoned on everything from the hospital wing to the community center. He sends me money every month, Emily continued, her words tumbling out faster now. And yes, I cash the checks, but I hate myself every time I do it. I use it for rent, because I'm too proud to move back home, too stubborn to accept their conditions. She collapsed back into the chair, all the fight draining from her. I had Lily when I was 22. unmarried. The father was well. That doesn't matter now. What matters is I refused to handle it quietly the way they wanted. So they gave me a choice. Give up my baby and maintain my place in the family, or keep her and lose everything. Jack sat in stunned silence, watching as Emily wiped angrily at her eyes. I chose Lily. Of course I chose Lily. But Dad, he started sending these checks. Said he couldn't bear to see his daughter working as a waitress. But he still won't acknowledge Lily as his granddaughter. Won't even look at her. She turned to Jack, her eyes fierce despite the tears. So, yes, I cash the checks. And yes, I lie about it. Because the truth is humiliating. I'm the disgraced Montgomery daughter who serves coffee to people who used to attend my parents' garden parties. I'm the cautionary tale mothers whisper to their daughters. Jack struggled to reconcile this new information with the Emily he thought he knew. The quiet, hard-working waitress was actually a Montgomery? The family that hosted charity galas and lived in the mansion on the hill? The money from the diner? Emily continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. That goes entirely to Lily. Her school, her clothes, her future. I won't touch Dad's money for anything but keeping a roof over our heads. I need to prove I can do this on my own. She met Jack's eyes, and the vulnerability there made his chest ache. Now you know. I'm not really the struggling single mom you thought you were helping. I'm just a fraud who's too proud to fully accept her father's money but too weak to completely refuse it. Jack sat back, feeling the metal chair's coldness seep through his jacket. The woman before him was still Emily, still the same person who treated his daughter with kindness, who worked hard despite having an easier option available. But she was also someone else, entirely someone with layers of hurt and pride he hadn't imagined. You must think I'm pathetic, she said, standing up and smoothing her apron. The poor little rich girl playing at being independent. Before Jack could respond, the back door swung open. Emily? Table 6 needs you, called Jenny's voice. I should go, Emily said quickly, already turning away. Now you know the truth. I won't blame you for judging me. She disappeared inside, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. The trust he'd been building with Emily felt suddenly fragile, like a glass ornament balanced on the edge of a shelf. He looked through the window where he could see Sarah and Lily still chatting animatedly over their drawings, blissfully unaware of the complicated adult world swirling around them. The revelation sat heavy in his stomach. Emily wasn't the person he'd thought she was, not entirely. She wasn't just a hard-working single mother struggling to make ends meet. She was a Montgomery. With access to wealth and privilege, she chose not to fully embrace. Her struggles were real, but they were chosen struggles, born of pride and principle rather than circumstance. Jack stood up slowly, his knee protesting the cold. He had his own decision to make now. Could he trust someone who had hidden such a fundamental truth about herself? The military had taught him that trust was everything, but it had also taught him that people were complex, that their stories rarely fit into neat, simple boxes. Through the window, he watched Emily move between tables, her practiced smile back in place, carrying her secrets like an invisible burden. She was the same person who had thanked him sincerely for his help, who had shown genuine care for Sarah, who had fought to keep her daughter despite the cost. But she was also someone who had let him believe a partial truth, who had accepted his help while hiding her real situation. The morning sun had climbed higher, eliminating the shadows where Jack sat. Everything looked clearer in the harsh light, perhaps too clear. Sometimes, he thought, it was easier when things remained in the gentle shadows of assumption and first impressions. The evening sun cast long shadows across the diner's parking lot as Jack sat in his truck, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Sarah's words from earlier kept echoing in his mind. She's proud, Dad. Like you. He watched as Emily moved between tables inside, her movements precise and determined despite her obvious exhaustion. The revelation about her wealthy family had thrown him off balance. Everything he thought he knew about her situation had shifted. Dad? Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts. She'd been quietly watching him from the passenger seat. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. That thing where you're trying to figure everyone out, like they're engines that need fixing. Sarah's voice held a gentle, teasing note, but her eyes were serious. Sometimes people are just complicated. Jack sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. It's not that simple, honey. She lied about— Did she? Sarah interrupted, turning in her seat to face him fully. Did she actually lie, or did we just assume things? The question made Jack pause. He thought back to every interaction with Emily, trying to remember if she had ever actually claimed to be poor. All he could recall was her fierce independence, her reluctance to accept help. Remember after Mom died? Sarah's voice grew softer, more hesitant. Remember how Mrs. Peterson from church kept bringing us casseroles? Jack's jaw tightened at the memory. That was different, was it? Sarah challenged. You hated it. You said you could take care of us just fine. You didn't want anyone's pity. We didn't need their help, Jack insisted. But even as he said it, he remembered those dark days after losing Claire. How he'd struggled to balance running the shop with caring for a grieving child. How his pride had made him refuse offers of assistance, even when he was barely keeping his head above water. Sarah reached over and placed her hand on his arm. Dad, remember what Pastor Mike said at Mom's funeral? About how sometimes the strongest thing we can do is let others help us? Jack nodded slowly. The memory was still clear, even after all these years. And remember how the Hendersons talked about us? Sarah continued, her voice taking on an edge. How they said you were probably going to fall apart without Mom? That I'd end up in foster care? Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel again. Those whispered predictions had fueled his determination to prove everyone wrong, to show them he could be both mother and father to Sarah. But you know what? Sarah's voice softened again. We did need help sometimes. We just needed it from people who saw us as equals, not as charity cases. Like Mr. Rodriguez, who taught me to make tamales when you were working late. Or Miss Chen, who let me study at her bookstore after school. Jack felt something loosen in his chest as he listened to his daughter's wisdom. She had always been perceptive, just like her mother. Maybe Emily's like that too, Sarah suggested. Maybe she's not trying to trick anyone. Maybe she's just trying to stand on her own 2 feet, even if it means doing things the hard way. Through the diner's window, Jack watched as Emily knelt to help Lily with her homework, her face lighting up with pride as her daughter worked through a math problem. The scene stirred something in his memory, himself sitting with Sarah at their kitchen table, determined to figure out 4th-grade fractions together rather than accept help from well-meaning neighbors. When the Hendersons saw us at church, Sarah continued, they always looked at us with such pity, like we were some tragic story. But Emily doesn't look at us that way, does she? She looks at us like we're just people. Jack thought about how Emily had always treated them with quiet respect, never commenting on their loss, never offering unwanted sympathy. She simply served them pie, shared genuine smiles, and treated Sarah like any other teenager, not a motherless child to be pitied. I was so angry, he admitted quietly, thinking she might be manipulating people's kindness. But maybe she's just trying to prove something to herself, Sarah finished. Like someone else I know. Jack looked at his daughter, really looked at her. When had she grown so wise? She wasn't just Claire's spitting image anymore. She had her mother's insight too. That ability to see straight to the heart of things. The sun had nearly set now, painting the sky in deep purples and oranges. Inside the diner, Emily was helping Lily pack up her school books, their movements synchronized in the familiar dance of parent and child. Having money doesn't mean you can't be lonely, Sarah said softly. Having a fancy family name doesn't mean you feel loved. Jack remembered the photo he'd seen in Emily's wallet. Mother and daughter alone, no extended family in sight. He thought about what it must have taken for her to walk away from wealth and security, to choose independence over compromise. The real test of compassion, he realized, wasn't just helping someone in material need. It was harder to offer understanding to someone whose struggles weren't visible, whose pride might mask deeper wounds. It would take patience to earn Emily's trust, humility to admit his own quick judgments, and grace to accept that some stories couldn't be simplified into right and wrong. You're pretty smart, you know that? Jack said, finally turning to smile at his daughter. Sarah grinned back. I had a pretty good teacher, even if he is a bit stubborn sometimes. Jack watched as Emily and Lily prepared to leave the diner, the little girl chattering excitedly about something while her mother listened with complete attention. He recognized that focused look, the one that said nothing else in the world mattered except this moment with your child. Maybe true compassion meant seeing beyond the surface, beyond pride and appearances, to the shared human experiences underneath. Maybe it meant remembering your own struggles before judging another's choices. Jack started the truck's engine, understanding that his journey with Emily was just beginning. It would require more than simple acts of kindness. It would demand the courage to be vulnerable, the wisdom to be patient, and the strength to set aside his own assumptions. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Sarah squeezed his hand. No words were needed. They both knew that sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought with weapons or tools, but with open hearts and understanding minds. The evening sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon when Emily's shift ended. She untied her apron with weary fingers, her shoulders dropping slightly as she gathered her things. Lily sat at the counter, swinging her legs while finishing the last bits of her homework.
"Mom, look!"
Lily held up her math worksheet, beaming.
"I got all the problems right."
Emily's tired face brightened. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." She leaned down to kiss the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo. Sarah, who had been watching from their booth, suddenly jumped up.
"Dad, we should invite them to lunch."
Jack's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "Sarah, I don't think, please?" Sarah's eyes sparkled with that look Jack knew all too well, the one that usually ended with him giving in.
"They probably haven't had a proper meal all day, and Lily can show me more of her drawings."
Jack glanced over at Emily, who was helping Lily pack up her school supplies. The earlier tension from their conversation about the envelope still hung in the air, making his chest feel tight. But Sarah was right. Emily did look exhausted, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she'd probably skipped dinner herself to save money, wealthy family or not. "All right," he conceded, watching Sarah's face light up. "But only if they want to." Sarah was already halfway to the counter before he finished speaking.
"Emily, would you and Lily like to have lunch with us? There's this great sandwich place just down the street."
Emily's head snapped up, her eyes meeting Jack's across the diner. He could see the internal struggle playing across her face, pride warring with exhaustion, independence battling loneliness.
"Oh, we couldn't possibly—"
Emily started, but Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Please, Mom? Sarah said she'd show me how to make friendship bracelets." Lily's eyes were wide with hope, and Jack watched as Emily's resistance crumbled in the face of her daughter's enthusiasm. "Well," Emily hesitated, adjusting her purse strap. "I suppose we could."
"Great."
Sarah clapped her hands together. "Dad's buying." Jack stood up, pulling out his wallet. "The least I can do after all that excellent coffee service." He tried to keep his tone light, hoping to ease some of the awkwardness between them. The walk to the sandwich shop was short, with Sarah and Lily skipping ahead, their heads bent together in conspiratorial whispers. Jack and Emily followed a few steps behind, maintaining a careful distance between them. "You don't have to do this," Emily said quietly, her eyes fixed on the girls ahead. "I know what you must think of me now." Jack considered his words carefully. "I think you're doing your best in a complicated situation." He paused, watching as Lily laughed at something Sarah said. "That's all any of us can do." The sandwich shop was warm and inviting, with red-checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh bread in the air. They found a booth near the window, Sarah and Lily naturally gravitating to one side, leaving Jack and Emily to sit across from them.
"Look, Mom."
Lily pointed excitedly at the menu.
"They have grilled cheese with tomato soup."
Emily's eyes flickered to the prices, a habit Jack recognized all too well. "Maybe we should—" "Order whatever you'd like," Jack cut in gently. "Sarah and I come here all the time. Everything's good." The waitress came by, her notepad ready. Sarah ordered a turkey club, while Lily bounced in her seat as she asked for the grilled cheese. Emily hesitated before ordering a simple garden salad, and Jack chose the house special, roast beef on sourdough. An awkward silence settled over the table after the waitress left. Sarah, ever the peacemaker, pulled out some colorful threads from her purse. "Want to learn how to make a friendship bracelet while we wait, Lily?"
"Can I, Mom?"
Lily asked, already reaching for the bright strings. Emily nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips as she watched her daughter lean in close while Sarah demonstrated the basic knots. "She's good with kids," Emily observed softly. Jack felt a surge of pride. "She gets that from her mother." The words slipped out before he could stop them, and he saw Emily's expression shift with understanding. "How long?" she started, then seemed to think better of it. 5 years. Jack answered anyway. "Cancer." Sarah was 11. Emily's hand moved slightly across the table, as if she wanted to reach out, but stopped herself. "I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult." Before Jack could respond, their food arrived, steam rising from the plates. Lily's eyes went wide at the sight of her grilled cheese, perfectly golden and accompanied by a bowl of tomato soup. "This looks amazing," she exclaimed, carefully dipping a corner of her sandwich into the soup. The first few bites were eaten in silence, but gradually the tension began to ease. Sarah told stories about her band practice, making Lily giggle with tales of the tuba player who always fell asleep during rehearsal. Emily slowly relaxed, adding her own amusing customer stories from the diner. "And then," Sarah was saying, barely containing her laughter, "Dad tried to fix Mrs. Henderson's vacuum cleaner, but it suddenly turned on and sprayed dust everywhere." "Hey now," Jack protested, but he was smiling. "That vacuum had it out for me." Emily's laugh was unexpected and genuine, transforming her tired face. "Remind me not to bring my appliances to your shop." "Oh, he's actually really good," Lily chimed in, her face serious. "He fixed my mom's car last week when it wouldn't start. She said he was a lifesaver." Emily blushed slightly, but didn't deny it. The car's been running perfectly since then. The conversation flowed more easily after that, weaving between Sarah's school adventures, Lily's artistic aspirations, and Jack's most memorable repair jobs. Emily gradually joined in more, sharing stories about Lily's early years that had them all laughing. By the time the plates were cleared away, the awkwardness from earlier had largely dissipated. Lily proudly showed off the half-finished friendship bracelets Sarah had helped her make, the blue and yellow threads forming a neat pattern. "Can we do this again sometime?" Lily asked hopefully, looking between her mother and Jack. The question hung in the air for a moment, heavy with possibility. Jack found himself holding his breath, waiting for Emily's response. Emily looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Sarah's encouraging smile, and finally at Jack. Something in her expression softened, the defensive edge from earlier mellowing into something warmer. "Maybe we can," she said quietly, and Jack felt something in his chest loosen at the words. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting a golden glow over their table. For just a moment they weren't a widowed veteran, an estranged heiress, and their daughters. They were simply four people sharing a meal, finding unexpected comfort in each other's company. The autumn breeze rustled through the nearly empty diner as Emily wiped down the last table. Jack sat at the counter, nursing a coffee while Sarah and Lily giggled over their shared coloring book nearby. "You don't have to wait," Emily said, glancing at Jack. "We're fine walking home." "I know you are," Jack replied simply, his voice gentle. "But maybe I want to." Emily paused, her cleaning cloth hovering over the table's surface. Something in his tone made her defenses waver. After a moment, she slid into the booth across from him, her hands fidgeting with the damp cloth. "Why are you so kind to us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack took a thoughtful sip of his coffee. "Because someone was kind to me and Sarah when we needed it most." He set his cup down, the ceramic making a soft clink against the counter. "After Marie, my wife, passed, I thought I had to do everything alone, prove I could handle it." Emily's eyes softened. "What happened?" "Cancer," Jack said, his weathered hands wrapping around the coffee cup. "Sarah was just 8. I was overseas when it started. By the time I got home." He trailed off, the memory still raw even after all these years. "I'm so sorry," Emily whispered, genuinely moved. "Our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, she wouldn't let me push her away. Brought us casseroles, watched Sarah when I had to work late." Jack's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Taught me it's okay to accept help sometimes." Emily was quiet for a long moment, watching Lily and Sarah share colored pencils. "My family," she started, then stopped, swallowing hard. "They had everything planned out for me. The right college, the right career, the right husband." She gave a bitter laugh. "Then I got pregnant at 19. Jack listened intently, his face free of judgment. "When I told them about the baby, they gave me an ultimatum." Emily's voice cracked slightly. "Either take care of it or leave. They said I was throwing my life away." She looked over at Lily, her eyes filling with fierce love. "But the moment I saw that positive test, she was already my whole world." "You chose her," Jack said softly. Emily nodded, wiping quickly at her eyes. "I packed what I could carry and left that night. Haven't been back since. She straightened her shoulders. That's why I won't cash those checks they send. I won't let them think they can buy their way back in after what they did. Must have been terrifying, Jack observed, his voice gentle. It was, Emily admitted. But every time I looked at my growing belly, I knew I'd made the right choice. She smiled faintly. Found work at a diner much like this one. The owner let me sleep in the break room until I could afford a place. Lily was born healthy and perfect, and I've never regretted it. For a second. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. You're a good mother, Emily. Her breath caught at the simple statement. Sometimes I wonder, she confessed, if I'm doing enough, giving her enough. Look at her, Jack said quietly. Emily turned to watch Lily, who was carefully showing Sarah how to draw a butterfly. Her daughter's face was bright with joy, her little hands gesturing animatedly as she explained her artistic process. That's a happy child, Jack continued. Secure, loved. You did that, Emily, all on your own. Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks before she could stop them. She quickly dabbed at them with her apron, embarrassed. I'm sorry. I don't usually. Hey, Jack said gently, sliding a clean napkin across the table. It's okay to not be strong all the time. Emily took the napkin, managing a watery smile. That's rich, coming from Mr. Fix-It himself. Jack chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. Guess we're both works in progress. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their daughters interact. Sarah was now teaching Lily how to fold the paper into an origami crane, their heads bent together in concentration. They're good for each other, Emily observed softly. Jack nodded. Sarah missed having someone to look after Marie. He cleared his throat. Well, she had to grow up too fast. Lily's never had a big sister figure before, Emily said. She adores Sarah. The last rays of sunlight streamed through the diner windows, painting everything in warm golden hues. Emily glanced at the clock and stood reluctantly. We should head home before it gets dark. Let us walk with you, Jack offered, standing as well. This time, Emily didn't protest. She called to Lily, who carefully gathered her drawings while Sarah helped her pack her backpack. The autumn evening was mild, with just enough crispness in the air to make walking pleasant. Lily skipped ahead with Sarah, their shadows long in the setting sun. Jack and Emily followed at a slower pace, their steps falling naturally in sync. Thank you, Emily said quietly, for listening, for not judging. Thank you for trusting me enough to share, Jack replied simply. They walked in comfortable silence, the girls' laughter floating back to them on the breeze. The golden light caught in Emily's hair, giving her an almost ethereal glow. Jack found himself stealing glances at her profile, noticing how the constant tension in her shoulders had eased somewhat. As they approached Emily's modest apartment building, Lily ran back to grab her mother's hand, chattering excitedly about her drawings. The four of them paused at the entrance, bathed in the warm light of the setting sun. For just a moment, they looked like any other family heading home after a long day. The tired but content parents, the laughing children, the sense of belonging that surrounded them all. The weekend arrived with gentle autumn sunshine warming the repair shop's weathered exterior. Jack was bent over an old Chevy's engine when he heard the familiar patter of small feet on concrete. Uncle Jack! Lily's voice echoed through the garage, making him smile even before he turned around. Emily stood in the doorway, her work uniform exchanged for casual jeans and a soft sweater. Sorry, Emily said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Sarah offered to watch her while I ran errands, but Lily insisted on seeing your shop first. Jack straightened up, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. No need to apologize. This place could use some sunshine. He winked at Lily, who beamed in response. Lily skipped over to his workbench, her eyes wide with curiosity. What's that? She asked, pointing at various tools scattered across the surface. Those are my helpers, Jack explained, picking up a wrench. This one's special. Want to learn how it works? Lily nodded eagerly, her pigtails bouncing. Emily stepped closer, arms crossed, but with a hint of a smile playing at her lips. Here, Jack said, kneeling beside Lily. He guided her small hands around the wrench's handle. See that bolt on the workbench? We're going to pretend it needs tightening. Lily's tongue poked out in concentration as she gripped the wrench. Jack's weathered hands gently covered hers, showing her how to position it correctly. That's it, he encouraged. Now, turn it clockwise. That means to the right, like the hands on a clock. Emily leaned against the workbench, watching them. The afternoon light filtering through the dusty windows caught the silver in Jack's hair, highlighting the gentle patience in his expression as he guided Lily through the motion. "I did it!" Lily exclaimed as the bolt turned under their combined effort. "You sure did, sweetheart." Jack's praise was warm and genuine. "You're a natural mechanic." Emily's eyes softened as she observed them. Something in her chest tightened at the sight of her daughter's delight and Jack's tender instruction. It had been so long since Lily had experienced anything close to a father figure in her life. "Mom, look!" Lily held up the wrench proudly. "I'm fixing things like Uncle Jack!" "I see that, baby." Emily's voice carried a slight tremor. "Maybe Uncle Jack will teach you more someday." Jack glanced up at Emily, catching the emotion in her eyes. For a moment, they shared a look that spoke volumes: gratitude, understanding, and something deeper neither dared to name. "Tell you what," Jack said, turning back to Lily. "How about we make this your special wrench?" He reached for a pink marker on his desk and carefully wrote Lily's tool on the handle. Lily's eyes grew wide. "Really? My very own?" "Really." Jack handed it to her solemnly. "But you have to promise to only use it when grown-ups are around, okay?" "I promise." Lily clutched the wrench to her chest like a treasure. Emily shook her head, but her smile was genuine. "Jack, you don't have to. I want to," he interrupted gently. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away quite as quickly. Sarah appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." She grinned at the scene before her. "Dad, are you turning Lily into a grease monkey already?" "She's a quick study," Jack replied, ruffling Lily's hair as he stood up. Emily checked her watch reluctantly. "We should go. I have those errands to run." She reached for Lily's hand. "Say thank you to Uncle Jack, sweetheart." Instead of just saying thanks, Lily threw her arms around Jack's waist in a tight hug. Jack froze for a moment, caught off guard by the simple affection, then gently patted her back. "Thank you for my wrench, Uncle Jack. I'll take good care of it, I promise." As Emily and Lily left with Sarah, Jack remained in his shop, the echo of Lily's laughter still ringing in his ears. The afternoon sun was setting, casting long shadows across his workbench, but the space felt warmer somehow, less empty. Later that night, Jack lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, except for the distant hum of the heating system. His thoughts drifted to the afternoon, to Lily's infectious enthusiasm, to Emily's softening expression as she watched them together. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine what it might be like to have more than just quiet evenings and solitary meals. He thought about how natural it had felt, teaching Lily about tools, seeing Emily's proud smile. The moment had held such simple joy, such possibility. His heart, long protected by grief's familiar armor, stirred with an unfamiliar warmth. Sleep eluded him as he remembered the way Emily's eyes had met his, how something unspoken had passed between them. It wasn't just about helping anymore, or even about friendship. There was a spark of something more, something that both thrilled and terrified him. Jack shifted in his bed, his thoughts a gentle tumble of what-ifs. What if he could have that kind of afternoon again? What if the shop could ring with Lily's laughter regularly? What if Emily's smile could become a daily blessing rather than an occasional gift? In the darkness of his room, he dared to imagine companionship again, not as a replacement for what he'd lost, but as something new and unexpected, something that made his heart feel lighter than it had in years. The autumn fair had transformed the town square into a wonderland of twinkling lights and cheerful chaos. Strings of golden bulbs crisscrossed overhead, casting warm pools of light on the crowds below. The air was rich with the scent of caramel apples, cotton candy, and the crisp October evening. Jack watched as Lily bounced on her toes beside the caramel apple stand, her eyes wide with wonder. Emily stood close to him, their shoulders almost touching as they waited in line. "You really don't have to get us anything," Emily protested softly, but Jack shook his head. "My treat," he insisted, smiling at the vendor. "4 caramel apples, please." The elderly man behind the counter winked at Lily as he dipped fresh apples into the bubbling caramel. "Extra coating for the little lady," he said, making Lily giggle. Sarah accepted her apple with a grin, immediately taking a big bite. "Dad always gets these at the fair," she explained to Emily. "It's tradition." They found a wooden bench near the Ferris wheel, sitting close together in the cool evening air. Lily perched between Jack and Emily, her small face sticky with caramel as she devoured her treat. "This is the best apple ever," Lily declared, caramel coating her chin. Emily laughed, reaching over with a napkin to wipe her daughter's face. "Slow down, sweetie. It's not going anywhere." Jack watched them, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the sweet treat in his hands. The simple joy of sharing this moment with them felt like a gift he hadn't known he'd been waiting for. "Can we go on the Ferris wheel?" Lily asked, pointing up at the towering ride with its spinning lights.
"Please, Mom."
Emily hesitated, glancing at the height. "I don't know, honey. I'll take her," Jack offered. "If that's okay with you, Emily." Emily met his eyes, finding nothing but sincere kindness there. She nodded slowly. "All right, but hold on tight to Uncle Jack, okay?"
"Yes."
Lily jumped up, grabbing Jack's hand.
"Come on, Uncle Jack."
Sarah laughed. "I'll keep Emily company, Dad. We'll wave from down here." The line moved quickly, and soon Jack was helping Lily into the swaying cart. She pressed close to his side as they began to rise, her small hand gripping his arm.
"Look,"
she gasped as they ascended.
"everyone looks so tiny."
Jack pointed out the lights of their town spreading out below them. "See that building with the red roof? That's my shop. And there's the diner where Mommy works." Lily bounced excitedly, making the cart sway. Jack steadied her with a gentle hand. "That's right. You've got good eyes, sweetheart." As they reached the top, Lily's excitement settled into quiet wonder. "Uncle Jack?" she asked softly. "Yes? Do you think Mommy is happy? She smiles more when we're with you and Sarah." Jack's heart squeezed at the simple observation. "I think your mom is trying her best to be happy, especially for you. And I hope being with us helps a little bit." Lily nodded seriously. "I think it does." She laughs more now. Below, Emily and Sarah waved up at them, their faces tilted to the sky. Jack waved back, watching Emily's hair catch the golden light of the fair. When they returned to solid ground, Lily ran to her mother, chattering excitedly about their adventure. Sarah suggested they explore the game booths, leading them through the crowded fairground. The evening passed in a blur of laughter and simple pleasures. They watched Sarah win a stuffed bear at the ring toss, which she immediately gave to Lily. Jack showed off at the strength test, making Emily roll her eyes good-naturedly when he presented her with a small prize. As the night grew cooler, they found themselves near the center of the fair, where couples were slow dancing to old country songs under strings of lights. Lily was starting to droop, her earlier energy fading into sleepy contentment. "I think someone's ready to head home," Emily said softly, watching her daughter's eyes grow heavy. "Here," Jack offered, opening his arms. "Let me carry her to the car." Emily didn't protest as Jack gently lifted Lily, who immediately snuggled into his shoulder. Sarah walked ahead, clearing a path through the thinning crowd. The drive home was quiet, filled with the gentle hum of the engine and Lily's soft breathing. She remained curled in Jack's arms in the back seat, while Sarah drove carefully through the darkened streets. When they pulled up to Emily's small house, Jack carried Lily to the front door, her weight familiar and precious in his arms. Emily unlocked the door, then turned to face him in the porch light. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered, her eyes shining with something more than just the reflection of light. "For everything." Jack stood there, holding her sleeping daughter, feeling more complete than he had in years. His heart was so full it almost hurt, filled with a joy he'd thought was lost forever. In that moment, under the soft porch light with Emily's grateful smile and Lily's trusting weight in his arms, he knew that sometimes life's greatest gifts come wrapped in the simplest moments. He carefully transferred Lily to Emily's arms, watching as she cradled her daughter close. Sarah waited in the car, giving them this quiet moment of connection. The string lights from their neighbor's porch cast gentle shadows across Emily's face as she smiled one last time before disappearing inside with Lily. Jack stood there for a moment longer, his heart full to bursting with the perfect happiness of the evening. The autumn fair glowed with warmth and possibility as Jack handed out caramel apples to their little group. Lily's face lit up as she accepted hers, careful not to get the sticky coating on her new sweater. Sarah immediately linked arms with the younger girl, guiding her toward a nearby bench where they could enjoy their treats together. "Those two have become inseparable," Emily remarked, watching the girls with a soft smile. Her hair caught the golden light of the festival lanterns, and Jack found himself studying her profile, noting how the tension that usually lined her face had melted away. "Sarah's always wanted a little sister," Jack said, his voice gentle. "Never thought I'd see her this happy again after." He trailed off, but Emily understood. She reached over and squeezed his hand briefly. "Look, Dad," Sarah called out, pointing toward the Ferris wheel that dominated the fairground skyline. "We have to go on that." Lily clapped her hands. Caramel apple temporarily forgotten. "Can we, Mommy? Please?" Emily hesitated, glancing at the towering structure. "I don't know, sweetie. It's pretty high." "I'll keep her safe," Sarah promised, already standing up. "We can all go together." Jack found himself being pulled along by the girls' enthusiasm. The line for the Ferris wheel wasn't too long, and soon they were being seated in pairs, Sarah insisting on riding with Lily while Jack and Emily shared the car behind them. As their car lifted slowly into the night sky, Emily gripped the safety bar tightly. Jack noticed her knuckles turning white. "Not a fan of heights?" he asked gently. She laughed nervously. "That obvious, huh? I've never been good with them, but I didn't want to disappoint Lily." "Here," Jack said, placing his hand over hers on the bar. "I won't let anything happen to you." Their car reached the top, and the whole festival spread out below them like a jeweled blanket. The girls' laughter floated up from the car in front, and Emily gradually relaxed, leaning slightly against Jack's shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, "I never thought I'd have this again." "Have what?" "This feeling. Like everything's going to be okay." She turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the festival lights. "Like, maybe I don't have to do it all alone anymore." Jack's heart swelled with emotion. "You don't," he said simply. When they got off the ride, Sarah was already making plans for next weekend. "We should go to the pumpkin patch," she declared. "Halloween's coming up, and Lily's never carved a pumpkin before." "Never?" Jack asked, looking at Emily questioningly. Emily shrugged, a touch of sadness crossing her face. "We've moved around a lot. Never really had the chance for traditions." "Then it's settled," Sarah announced with the authority of a general marshaling her troops. "Next Saturday pumpkin patch, and then we can have a carving party at our house." "Can we really?" Lily asked, her small face hopeful. Jack nodded. "Of course we can. We'll make hot chocolate and everything." "And after that," Sarah continued, warming to her role as family social coordinator, "we should start planning Thanksgiving. Mom always used to make the best stuffing, but I bet Emily has some good recipes too." A moment of awkward silence fell as Sarah realized what she'd implied, but Emily smiled warmly, touching Sarah's arm. "I'd love to learn your mom's stuffing recipe if you'd want to teach me." Sarah's eyes welled up with happy tears. "Really? That would be amazing." They wandered through the festival, stopping to play some carnival games. Jack won a stuffed penguin at the ring toss, which he presented to Lily with a flourish. The little girl hugged it tight, then surprised him by throwing her arms around his waist. "Thank you, Uncle Jack," she exclaimed. Jack felt his throat tighten with emotion as he patted her head. When he looked up, he saw Emily watching them, her eyes soft with understanding. Later, as they sat at picnic tables enjoying funnel cakes, Sarah couldn't contain herself anymore. "You know," she said, sugar dusting her chin, "we make a pretty good family." Emily nearly choked on her drink, and Jack felt his face flush. But neither of them denied it. "I mean it," Sarah pressed on, emboldened by their silence. "Look at us. We've got the perfect setup. Dad's got his shop. Emily's got her job at the diner. Lily and I are already best friends." She grinned mischievously. "And you two aren't fooling anyone with those googly eyes you keep making at each other." "Sarah," Jack sputtered, while Emily turned bright red. "What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Sarah shrugged, completely unrepentant. "Besides, don't you think it's time we all admitted this isn't just about being neighbors anymore?" Lily looked up from her funnel cake, powdered sugar covering her nose. "Does this mean Uncle Jack could be my real dad someday?" The innocent question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Jack found himself looking at Emily, who was staring intently at her plate, her cheeks still pink. "Sweetheart," Emily began carefully, "things are a bit more complicated than that." "But they don't have to be," Sarah insisted. "Dad's happier than he's been in years. You smile more now, Emily. And Lily and I." She wrapped an arm around the younger girl. "We're already sisters in our hearts." Jack cleared his throat, gathering his courage. "Sarah might be a bit forward about it," he said softly, "but she's not wrong about one thing. I am happier than I've been in a long time. Emily finally looked up, meeting his gaze. Jack, we don't have to figure everything out right now, he continued. But I think we both know there's something here worth exploring. A small smile tugged at Emily's lips. I think you might be right about that. The rest of the evening passed in a warm glow of possibility. They rode more rides, played more games, and made plans for the coming weeks. When Lily fell asleep in Jack's arms as they walked toward the parking lot, it felt natural, right? I could carry her, Emily offered, but Jack shook his head. She's fine right here, he said softly, adjusting the sleeping child against his shoulder. Sarah walked ahead, texting her friends about their evening. Jack, Emily said quietly as they reached the cars, thank you for everything, for making us feel like we belong somewhere again. He wanted to reach for her hand, to pull her close, to tell her that she and Lily had brought just as much light into his and Sarah's lives. But before he could speak, a commotion from the direction of Miller's diner caught their attention. Through the diner's large windows, they could see a tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit storming through the front door, his face twisted with anger. Emily's whole body tensed. Oh no, she whispered, her face draining of color. That's my father. The peaceful routine Jack had settled into shattered one Wednesday afternoon. He was finishing up paperwork at his repair shop when Sarah burst through the door, her face flushed from running. Dad, Emily's father is at the diner. He looks really angry. Jack's heart dropped. He grabbed his jacket and hurried out, leaving the invoices scattered across his desk. The short walk to Miller's diner felt endless. Through the large front windows, he could see Emily's father tall and imposing in his expensive suit towering over the counter where Emily stood frozen, her face pale. Inside, the diner had gone quiet. The few regular customers watched uncomfortably as Emily's father's voice carried across the room. So, this is what you've reduced yourself to? Her father's words dripped with contempt. Serving coffee to make some point about independence? And now I hear you're hanging around with some... He glanced around the diner with disgust. Mechanic? Emily's hands trembled as she gripped her order pad. Dad, please. Not here. Jack moved forward, positioning himself near Emily. The lunch crowd watched, forks suspended mid-air. Mr. Harrison, Jack said quietly but firmly, this isn't the place for this conversation. Emily's father turned, his eyes narrowing. And you must be Turner, the veteran charity case my daughter's taken pity on. Dad! Emily's voice cracked. Jack kept his voice steady, though his jaw tightened. Sir, I respect that you're Emily's father, but she's a grown woman who's worked hard to build a life for herself and Lily. A good life? A good life? Mr. Harrison laughed harshly. Working double shifts at a greasy spoon? Living in that tiny apartment when I could be what, Dad? Emily interrupted, her voice rising. Living off your money? Pretending Lily doesn't exist like you wanted me to? The diner had grown so quiet, you could hear the coffee maker dripping in the kitchen. Betty, the other waitress, stood frozen by the pie display, coffee pot forgotten in her hand. I'm trying to protect you, Mr. Harrison insisted. But instead, you're letting this stranger play hero. Does he know about your trust fund, Emily? About the life you threw away? Jack saw Emily flinch. Her face flushed red as several customers turned to stare. That's enough, Jack said firmly. You're embarrassing your daughter and yourself. Oh, I'm embarrassing her? Mr. Harrison's voice grew louder. What about how she's embarrassing our family name? And now, taking up with a widowed handyman. Stop it! Emily shouted, tears in her eyes. The coffee pot she'd been holding clattered to the counter, dark liquid spreading across the surface. Jack reached for her arm. Emily, she jerked away from his touch, her eyes wild with hurt and shame. Don't. Just don't. I'm trying to help, Jack said softly. Help? Emily's voice cracked. Like everyone else who thinks they know what's best for me? Who looks at me with those pitying eyes? That's not what this is, Jack protested. But Emily was beyond hearing. I saw how you looked at me that first night, she continued, her voice rising. Poor Emily, the waitress in the worn-out uniform. Then you found out about my family, and it was poor Emily, the rich girl playing at being independent. Well, I don't need your pity, Jack Turner. The diner had gone deathly quiet. Even Mr. Harrison seemed taken aback by his daughter's outburst. Emily, Jack tried again, his heart aching. You know that's not true. What about these past weeks? What about Sarah and Lily? What about them? Emily's voice was bitter now. Another chance for you to be the hero? To save the struggling single mother? Jack felt each word like a physical blow. He saw Sarah standing in the doorway, her face stricken as she watched the scene unfold. You're upset, Jack said quietly. Your father's showing up like this. Don't tell me how I feel, Emily snapped. I'm not some project for you to fix. I'm not your second chance at having a family. I'm not… Her voice broke. I'm not your dead wife. A collective gasp went through the diner. Jack stepped back as if she'd slapped him, the color draining from his face. Emily's hands flew to her mouth, horror replacing anger as she realized what she'd said. For a moment, she stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Then, she untied her apron with shaking hands, let it fall to the floor, and rushed past them all toward the door. Emily, wait, Jack called after her, but she was already gone, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the silent diner, surrounded by stunned faces and the scattered pieces of what had felt just hours ago like happiness within reach. Sarah moved toward him, reaching for his hand, but Jack couldn't move. He stood there, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the place, including Mr. Harrison's now slightly uncomfortable gaze. The coffee continued to drip slowly off the counter, marking time in the heavy silence. Betty finally moved, grabbing a rag to wipe up the spill. The small action seemed to break the spell, and conversations slowly, awkwardly resumed. But Jack remained rooted to the spot, Emily's words echoing in his ears, the memory of her tear-streaked face burning in his mind. What hurt most wasn't the accusation about pity. It was how completely wrong she'd been about his feelings. But now, watching the diner door swing closed behind her, Jack wondered if he'd ever get the chance to tell her the truth. The evening after the confrontation stretched endlessly before Emily. She'd called Betty apologizing and begging to switch shifts, unable to face returning to the diner where her world had crumbled. Now she sat in her small apartment kitchen, staring at the empty chair where Jack had sat just days ago, helping Lily with her math homework. The apartment felt colder somehow. Lily was at a sleepover with her friend Katie, and the silence pressed in from all sides. Emily's hands shook as she tried to pour herself a cup of tea, spilling hot water on the counter. She didn't bother wiping it up. What have I done? She whispered to the empty room. Her father's cruel words still rang in her ears, but they weren't what truly haunted her. It was Jack's face, the way the light had died in his eyes when she'd mentioned his wife. The memory made her stomach twist with shame. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through recent messages. There was the last one from Jack sent just yesterday. Sarah says Lily left her science book here. I can drop it by tomorrow. Such a simple text, full of the easy familiarity they'd built. Emily's thumb hovered over the keyboard. But what could she possibly say now? In the living room, a small frame caught her eye, a photo Sarah had taken at the fall festival. Jack was teaching Lily how to toss rings onto bottles, his hands gentle as he guided her throw. Emily remembered how natural it had felt, watching them together. How safe. The next morning, Emily forced herself to go to work. The regular customers gave her careful, sideways glances. Betty tried to be kind, touching her arm gently when they passed in the kitchen. But Emily flinched away from the sympathy. "Order up!" called Marco from the kitchen, and Emily moved mechanically to collect the plates. Her hands felt numb, her movements wooden. She'd done this job 1,000 times, but today every motion felt wrong. The bell above the door chimed, and Emily's heart leaped before she could stop it. But it wasn't Jack, just Mr. Peterson coming in for his usual coffee and toast. Of course it wasn't Jack. Why would he ever come back after what she'd said? She caught her reflection in the chrome of the coffee maker's pale face, dark circles under her eyes. The same face that had looked back at her years ago, when she'd first walked away from her family's wealth, determined to make it on her own. Pride had driven her then. Pride still drove her now, but it no longer felt like strength. It felt like armor that had grown too heavy to bear. During her break, Emily sat in the back alley, the same spot where Jack had confronted her about the mysterious envelopes. She'd been defensive then, too, walls up, ready to push him away. But he'd listened. He'd understood. When was the last time anyone had truly tried to understand her? The afternoon dragged on. Every time the door opened, Emily's pulse quickened, hoping to see Sarah's bright smile or hear Lily calling, Uncle Jack!" across the diner. But the familiar faces didn't appear. The booth where they usually sat remained empty, a silent accusation. At home that evening, Emily tried to focus on making dinner. Lily chatted about her sleepover, oblivious to her mother's distraction. "Can we go to Mr. Jack's shop tomorrow?" Lily asked suddenly. "He said he'd show me how to change a tire." Emily nearly dropped the pan she was holding. "Not tomorrow, sweetie." "But why? Is he busy?" Emily's voice caught. "We just can't, okay?" Lily's face fell. "Did something happen? Did you and Mr. Jack have a fight?" "It's complicated, baby." Emily turned away, blinking back tears. "Sometimes grown-ups. Sometimes we make mistakes." After Lily went to bed, Emily sat on her small balcony, wrapped in an old sweater. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. Somewhere across town, she knew Jack's repair shop sat dark and quiet. Was he at home now? Was Sarah asking him the same questions Lily had asked her? She pulled out her phone again, reading through old messages. Pictures Sarah had sent of the girls together. A text from Jack about meeting for coffee. Simple moments that had slowly built into something that felt like home. Emily pressed her hands to her eyes, but she couldn't stop the tears. She'd accused Jack of pitying her, but the truth was, he'd never once made her feel less than equal. He'd offered friendship, understanding, and maybe something more, not because he felt sorry for her, but because he saw her, the real her, beyond the waitress uniform, beyond her family name. And she'd thrown it all away, not because of her father's cruel words, but because of her own fears, her own stubborn pride. The night grew colder, but Emily couldn't bring herself to go inside. The apartment felt too small, too empty. She thought of Jack's warm kitchen, where they'd all squeezed around his old table last Sunday, eating pot roast and laughing at Sarah's dramatic retelling of her latest band practice disaster. She'd felt something there, watching Jack help Lily cut her meat, seeing Sarah's easy smile. Something she'd been afraid to name, because naming it meant risking it, risking her heart, her independence, her carefully constructed walls. Now those walls felt less like protection and more like a prison. She'd built them so high, she couldn't see over them anymore. Couldn't see that what Jack offered wasn't pity at all. It was acceptance, understanding, maybe even love. The realization hit her like a physical ache. She curled into herself, letting the tears come freely now. The sound of a car door slamming somewhere below made her start, half hoping to see Jack's familiar truck. But the street remained empty, the night silent except for the distant sound of trains and her own quiet sobs. Emily stayed there until her tears ran dry, until the moon rose high over the town they both called home. In the distance, a dog barked, and she wondered if Jack was awake too, sitting in his own quiet house, feeling this same hollow ache in his chest. Pride had been her shield for so long, but now, sitting alone in the dark, Emily finally understood it had also been her prison, and she'd just locked away the key. The kitchen clock ticked away in Emily's small apartment as she mechanically stirred a pot of chicken soup. Her hands trembled slightly, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. The events at the diner played over and over in her mind like a broken record. "Mommy, I don't feel good." Lily's small voice came from the doorway. Emily turned to see her daughter leaning against the wall, her face flushed and hair sticking to her forehead. "Oh, sweetie." Emily dropped the spoon and rushed to her daughter's side, pressing her palm against Lily's forehead. Her heart skipped a beat at the burning heat radiating from her child's skin. "You're burning up." Lily's usual sparkle was dimmed, her eyes glassy. "My head hurts, Mommy, and I'm cold." Emily wrapped her arms around her daughter, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let's get you some medicine and into bed, okay?" She helped Lily to her small bedroom, decorated with paper butterflies they'd made together on happier days. After giving Lily some children's fever medicine, Emily tucked her under the covers, adding an extra blanket when Lily shivered. "Try to rest, baby." Emily stroked Lily's hair, her worry growing as she felt the fever seeming to climb despite the medicine. An hour passed. Emily checked Lily's temperature again, her hands shaking as she read the thermometer. 104.2. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Lily, honey, wake up." Emily gently shook her daughter. But Lily only moaned softly, her skin hot and dry. "Baby, please wake up." Panic clawed at Emily's throat. She scooped Lily into her arms, wrapping her in the blanket. Her daughter felt like a furnace against her chest, limp and burning. Emily grabbed her purse and car keys, struggling to keep her composure as she hurried down the apartment stairs. The night air was bitter cold as Emily rushed to her old Honda, carefully placing Lily in the back seat. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely buckle the seatbelt. "Stay with me, baby," Emily whispered, her voice cracking. "Please stay with me." The drive to Memorial Hospital was a blur of streetlights and terror. Emily ran red lights, praying no police would stop her. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Lily's still form, her daughter's usually animated face now frighteningly slack. The emergency room's fluorescent lights were harsh and unforgiving as Emily burst through the doors, Lily cradled against her chest. "Please, my daughter, she won't wake up. Her fever's so high." Emily's voice broke as she approached the desk. The nurse took one look at Lily and immediately called for assistance. Everything happened in a whirlwind after that. Doctors in white coats, nurses with concerned faces, questions Emily could barely focus enough to answer. They took Lily from her arms, laying her small body on a gurney that seemed impossibly large. "Ma'am, we need to know if she's had any other symptoms recently," a doctor asked, his pen poised over a clipboard. Emily tried to think through her panic. She was tired yesterday. I thought she was just worn out from the festival." Her voice caught as she remembered that happy day, Jack carrying a sleepy Lily to the car. Jack, who she'd pushed away when she needed him most. The medical team wheeled Lily through double doors, leaving Emily standing alone in the harsh lights. A nurse guided her to a plastic chair in the waiting area, promising to update her soon. Emily sat there, her arms feeling empty without Lily's weight. She'd never felt more alone. Her father's cruel words echoed in her head, mixed with her own angry response to Jack. Pride had made her push away the one person who had shown her genuine kindness, and now her phone was in her hand before she realized it. She stared at Jack's number, her thumb hovering over the screen. But shame held her back. After what she'd said to him, how could she ask for his help? In the next room, Sarah Turner was finishing her homework when her phone buzzed. The text was from Betty, the other waitress at the diner. "Emily's at Memorial with Lily. Poor thing looks terrified and alone." Sarah's heart clenched. Despite everything that had happened, she knew what she had to do. She found her father in his workshop, where he'd been spending most of his time since the confrontation at the diner. The radio played quietly as he methodically organized his tools, something he only did when trying to work through emotional turmoil. "Dad." Sarah's voice was urgent enough to make him look up. "Lily's in the hospital. Emily's there alone." Jack froze, a wrench suspended in his hand. For a moment, he didn't move, and Sarah could see the internal struggle on his face hurt, warring with concern. Then he set down the wrench and grabbed his coat from the hook by the door. No hesitation, no questions asked. Sarah saw in that simple action everything she loved about her father, his capacity to set aside his own pain to help others, his inherent goodness that her mother had fallen in love with all those years ago. "Keys," he said gruffly, patting his pockets. Sarah grabbed them from the workbench and pressed them into his hand. "I'm coming with you." Jack nodded, already heading for the truck. Some things went beyond pride, beyond hurt feelings, beyond misunderstandings. Some things simply required showing up, and Jack Turner had never been one to turn his back on someone in need, especially not someone he'd grown to care about, despite everything. The truck's engine roared to life in the quiet night, and they pulled out of the driveway. Sarah watched her father's profile in the dashboard lights, his jaw set with determination. Whatever had happened at the diner, whatever harsh words had been exchanged, none of it mattered now. There was a scared mother and a sick little girl who needed help, and that was all Jack needed to know. The fluorescent hospital lights cast harsh shadows across Emily's face as she paced the pediatric ward's waiting room. Her hands were clasped tightly against her chest, knuckles white with tension. The clock on the wall seemed to mock her with its slow ticking, each second stretching into an eternity while doctors examined Lily. "Ms. Reynolds?" a nurse called out, and Emily's head snapped up. "Your daughter's fever is quite high. We're starting her on antibiotics, but we'd like to keep her overnight for observation." Emily nodded mechanically, her throat too tight to speak. The nurse's words blurred together as she explained something about infection and monitoring. All Emily could focus on was the image of Lily's small form in that big hospital bed, her usually rosy cheeks now flushed with fever. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, and Emily turned to see Jack striding toward her, his face etched with concern. He was still wearing his work clothes, grease stains on his shirt suggesting he'd come straight from the shop. The sight of him, solid, dependable, there, despite everything she'd said, made her chest ache. Emily. His voice was gentle, careful, like he was approaching a wounded animal. How is she? They're keeping her overnight, Emily managed, her voice cracking. I can't. Without hesitation, Jack stepped forward and placed his steady hands on her shoulders. The simple touch broke something inside her, and Emily found herself leaning into his strength, her body trembling with suppressed sobs. Hey now, it's okay, Jack murmured, pulling her closer. Lily's getting the care she needs. You're not alone in this. Emily pressed her face against his shirt, breathing in the familiar scent of motor oil and laundry detergent. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for what I said at the diner. You never pitied me. I was the one who couldn't see past my own pride. Jack's hand moved in soothing circles on her back. We all say things we don't mean when we're hurt. Your father had no right to speak to you that way. A fresh wave of tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. I've spent so long trying to prove I don't need anyone. But watching Lily collapse, I've never felt so helpless. Being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone, Jack said softly. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let others help us. Quick footsteps approached, and Emily looked up to see Sarah hurrying toward them, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. Without a word, Sarah took Emily's hand and squeezed it tight, her young face full of genuine concern. I came as soon as Dad called, Sarah said. How's Lily doing? Emily wiped her eyes with her free hand, overwhelmed by the warmth of Sarah's grip. They're treating her with antibiotics. The nurse said we should know more in a few hours. Then we'll wait with you, Sarah declared, with all the certainty of youth. She pulled Emily toward the waiting room chairs, still holding her hand. Jack settled into the chair on Emily's other side, his solid presence a comfort she hadn't known she needed. The three of them sat together, Sarah occasionally sharing stories about her day at school, Jack offering to get coffee or snacks, both of them creating a cocoon of support around her. Hours passed, marked by nurse check-ins and doctor updates. Emily watched as Jack handled the paperwork she could barely focus on. As Sarah ran to the cafeteria to bring back sandwiches none of them really ate, they stayed, unwavering, as evening settled into night. Around midnight, the doctor returned with good news. Lily's fever was responding to treatment. She would need to stay another day, but the worst had passed. Relief made Emily's knees weak, and she found herself sinking back into her chair. You should get some rest, Jack suggested gently. Sarah and I can stay with Lily while you take a break. Emily shook her head, feeling fresh tears spring to her eyes. I don't deserve this, she whispered, looking between Jack and Sarah. I don't deserve you. Jack didn't argue, or try to convince her otherwise. He simply stayed, his hand finding hers in the dim light of the waiting room, his presence saying more than words ever could. Sarah curled up in her chair, head resting against Emily's shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. The teenager's steady breathing was a comfort in the quiet hospital night. Emily felt the walls she'd built around her heart continuing to crumble. Here, in this sterile hospital waiting room, she found something she'd been running from all along. Not pity, but love. Real, unconditional love that asked nothing in return except the courage to accept it. Jack's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, and Emily let herself lean into the gesture. The night stretched ahead, but she was no longer facing it alone. Jack settled into the hard plastic chair beside Emily, their shoulders barely touching. The waiting room's silence felt heavy, broken only by the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum and the distant beeping of medical equipment. You didn't have to come, Emily whispered, her eyes fixed on her trembling hands in her lap. After what I said at the diner. Of course I had to come. Jack's voice was gentle but firm. When Sarah told me about Lily, there wasn't even a question. Emily's shoulders shook as she fought back tears. I keep pushing everyone away. My family, you. I thought I was protecting myself, but all I've done is hurt the people who care about me." Jack stayed quiet, giving her space to continue. The hallway lights flickered, casting shifting shadows across the floor. "You know what's funny?" Emily's laugh was hollow. "I spent so many years proving I could do everything alone. Every time someone offered help, I saw it as proof that I wasn't good enough, that they thought I was weak." She wrung her hands together. "Even when you paid that grocery bill, part of me was so angry. Not at you, at myself, for needing help at all." "Being strong doesn't mean never needing anyone," Jack said softly. "Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is admit when we can't do it all alone." Emily turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time since he'd arrived. "How do you do that? How do you make it sound so simple?" "Because I learned it the hard way." Jack shifted in his seat, his voice growing thoughtful. "After Mary died, I tried to be everything for Sarah. Super dad, trying to fill both roles. I was drowning, but I wouldn't let anyone help. My pride nearly cost me my relationship with my daughter. What changed? Sarah got sick. Nothing serious, just the flu. But I was so exhausted trying to work and take care of her that I made a mistake at the shop. Could have been dangerous." He shook his head at the memory. "My neighbor Martha showed up with soup and wouldn't take no for an answer. She said something I've never forgotten. Jack Turner, God gave us community for a reason. Refusing help isn't noble. It's just plain stubborn." A small smile tugged at Emily's lips. "Sounds like something you'd say." "Maybe that's why your words at the diner hurt so much," Jack admitted quietly. "Because I saw myself in you. That same fierce pride. That same fear of being pitied." Emily's breath caught. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I never meant." She pressed her fingers to her eyes, trying to stem fresh tears. "When my father showed up, all those old feelings came rushing back. The shame, the judgment. I lashed out at the one person who's shown me nothing but kindness." "Your father was wrong," Jack said firmly. "About both of us. And Emily?" He waited until she met his eyes. "What you see is pity. It's not that at all. It's respect. Admiration, even. You're raising an amazing daughter, working hard, keeping your dignity, despite everything. That's not something to pity. It's something to honor." Emily's shoulders began to shake as the wall she'd built so carefully started to crumble. "I'm so tired of being strong all the time," she whispered. "So tired of pretending I don't need anyone." "Then stop pretending." Jack's voice was gentle but sure. "Needing people, letting them in, that's not weakness. It takes more courage to open your heart than to keep it locked away." "I'm scared," Emily admitted, her voice small. "What if I let people in and they leave? What if I trust and get hurt again?" "That's always the risk," Jack acknowledged. "But living behind walls, pushing away everyone who cares, that's its own kind of hurt, isn't it?" Emily nodded, tears flowing freely now. "When I saw you walk in tonight, I realized how much I've missed you, how much Lily's missed you and Sarah. We were happy, weren't we, before I ruined everything?" "You haven't ruined anything," Jack assured her. "We're still here. Sarah still asks about Lily every day. And He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not going anywhere, Emily. Not unless you want me to." "I don't," she whispered. "I really don't." The tension seemed to drain from Emily's body as she finally let go of the rigid control she'd maintained for so long. Hesitantly, she leaned sideways until her head rested on Jack's shoulder. He stayed perfectly still, offering silent support as her breathing steadied. "Thank you," she murmured, "for coming tonight, for not giving up on me." Jack didn't respond with words. He simply reached over and took her hand, his weathered fingers wrapping gently around hers. Together, they sat in the quiet hospital waiting room, the harsh fluorescent lights softened somehow by the peace that settled between them. For the first time since they'd met, there were no walls, no pretenses, just two people finding strength in their shared vulnerability. The clock continued its steady ticking, but Emily no longer felt its mocking presence. Instead, each second seemed to mark the rhythm of a new beginning, one where she didn't have to face life's challenges alone. Through the dim hospital lighting, Jack watched Emily's face as she dozed fitfully in the chair next to Lily's bed. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually neat hair fell in messy waves around her shoulders. His heart ached, seeing both mother and daughter so vulnerable, Lily lay small and pale against the white hospital sheets, her chest rising and falling steadily under the thin blanket. Various monitors beeped softly, tracking her vital signs. Jack had insisted on staying, even after Emily's initial protests that she could handle things alone. "You don't have to prove anything to me," he had told her gently. "Let someone help carry this weight." Now, hours into their vigil, Emily stirred and blinked awake. She immediately checked Lily's temperature with the back of her hand, a mother's instinct that never rested. "The fever's down a little," Jack said quietly. "Nurse came by while you were sleeping." Emily nodded, relief visible in the slight relaxation of her shoulders. "Thank you for staying," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve." "Stop that," Jack interrupted, his voice firm but kind. "You deserve every bit of support and more. Your pride isn't a sin, Emily. It's what's kept you going all these years." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I pushed you away. I said those horrible things because you were hurt," Jack finished. "I understand hurt, Emily. It makes us do things we regret." Their quiet moment was interrupted by heavy footsteps in the hallway. Emily tensed as her father, Richard Hayes, swept into the room, his expensive wool coat a stark contrast to the humble hospital setting. "I've arranged for Lily's transfer to Cleveland Memorial," he announced without preamble. "Their pediatric unit is the finest in the state. The ambulance will be here within the hour." Emily sat up straighter, her face paling. "Dad, I can't afford—" "Don't be ridiculous," Richard cut her off. "I'm handling everything. It's time you stop this foolish independence and let me take care of my granddaughter properly." Jack noticed Emily's hands trembling in her lap. He reached over and covered them with his own weathered palm, feeling her fingers grip his tightly. "Mr. Hayes," Jack said evenly, "Emily's been making sound decisions for Lily's care all along. The doctors here are monitoring her condition closely." Richard's gaze swept dismissively over Jack. "This doesn't concern you, Emily. Pack Lily's things. I've already spoken to the hospital administrator." Emily's voice shook, but grew stronger with each word. "Dad, stop. You can't just walk in here and take control. Lily is my daughter." "And look where your stubbornness has led." Richard's voice rose. "Working in that disgraceful diner, living in that tiny apartment, and now consorting with," he gestured at Jack, "someone clearly beneath our family station." Jack felt Emily flinch beside him, but he kept his voice steady. "Sir, with all due respect, your daughter has shown more strength and dignity than most people I've known. She's raised Lily with love and integrity." "Love doesn't pay medical bills," Richard scoffed. "No." Emily suddenly stood, her spine straight. "But it gives us the courage to face whatever comes our way. Jack taught me that." The monitor tracking Lily's heartbeat picked up slightly, and everyone instinctively lowered their voices. "The doctors here know what they're doing," Emily continued firmly. "Lily's receiving excellent care, and she's surrounded by people who love her, not just people who want to control her future." Richard's face reddened. "You're making a mistake." "Again, no, Dad." Emily's voice grew gentle but remained resolute. "My mistake was letting shame control my life, letting your disappointment define my worth." Jack showed me that accepting help doesn't mean surrendering my dignity. Jack stood beside her, his solid presence lending her strength. "Mr. Hayes, Emily's not alone anymore. She has people who care about her and Lily for who they are, not what name they carry." Richard looked between them, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "You'd choose this repairman over your own family?" "I'm choosing to be the mother Lily deserves," Emily replied. "One who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. One who knows that real love doesn't come with conditions." A nurse appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension in the room. "Is everything all right? We need to keep things calm for our patient." Richard straightened his coat, his jaw tight. "This isn't over, Emily." "No, it's not," she agreed quietly. "But it's different now. I'm different." After Richard stormed out, Emily's legs gave way, and she sank back into her chair. Jack knelt beside her, his hands steady on her shoulders. "You did good," he murmured. "Real good." Emily leaned into his strength, tears finally falling freely. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," Jack said firmly. "But you don't have to anymore. That's what family means, the real kind." From the bed came a small voice, weak but clear. "Mommy?" They both turned to see Lily's eyes fluttering open, her small hand reaching out. Emily quickly wiped her tears and moved to take her daughter's hand. Jack's warm presence right behind her, supporting them both. The monitors beeped steadily, marking the rhythm of their hearts beating as one family, bound not by blood or wealth, but by something far more precious, love that asked for nothing but gave everything. A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Emily's father, Richard Hayes, stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space. His expensive suit looked out of place among the sterile hospital walls. His eyes moved from Lily to Emily, then settled on Jack with a mix of suspicion and uncertainty. "Emily," he said, his voice softer than before. "I heard about Lily. I came as soon as I could." Emily stiffened in her chair, her hand instinctively reaching for Jack's. He gave it a gentle squeeze, offering silent support. "The doctors say she'll be fine," Emily replied, her voice tight but controlled. "She just needs rest and medication." Richard took a tentative step into the room, his usual commanding presence diminished by the hospital setting.
"I know a specialist in Cleveland, the best pediatrician in the state."
"I could have her transferred." "No." Emily's response was firm but not angry. "She's getting good care here. These doctors know what they're doing." Jack watched as Richard's face shifted through several emotions: frustration, worry, and finally, something that looked like acceptance. The older man's shoulders sagged slightly as he looked at his sleeping granddaughter. "She looks so small," Richard whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "She's stronger than she looks," Jack said quietly.
"Just like her mother."
Richard's gaze snapped to Jack, studying him with new eyes. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. But instead of the expected argument, Richard pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. "I've been wrong about many things," Richard admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "When you left home, Emily, I thought you were making the biggest mistake of your life. I was so focused on our family's reputation that I couldn't see what really mattered." Emily's grip on Jack's hand tightened. "And what matters, Dad?" "This." Richard gestured to Lily. "Family. Real family. Not the artificial kind we parade around at charity events." He paused, swallowing hard. "I've missed 6 years of my granddaughter's life because of my pride." Jack noticed tears forming in Emily's eyes. He wanted to give father and daughter privacy, but Emily's hand held him firmly in place. "I saw how you stood up for my daughter at the diner," Richard said, addressing Jack directly. "I was angry then, but now I understand. You weren't trying to take advantage of her wealth or position. You were simply being kind." "That's who Jack is," Emily said softly. "He helps people because it's right, not because he wants anything in return. Something our family could learn from." Richard nodded slowly, his eyes moving to the various get-well cards Sarah had taped to Lily's bedside table.
"I see that now, and I see how much you've built here, Emily."
"Without our money or influence, you've created a real life, raised a beautiful daughter." He took a shaky breath. "I'm proud of you." Emily's sharp intake of breath echoed in the quiet room. These were words she'd waited years to hear. "I'm not asking to take over or change anything," Richard continued, "but if you'll allow it, I'd like to be part of Lily's life. Part of your life again, on your terms." Lily stirred slightly in her sleep, mumbling something about butterflies. All 3 adults watched her for a moment, their hearts full of different but equally powerful emotions. "I'd like that," Emily finally said. "But things have to be different. No more trying to control my choices. No more looking down on the life I've built or the people I care about." Richard's eyes met Jack's again, this time with respect rather than judgment. "I understand, and I apologize for my behavior at the diner. It was beneath our family's true values." Jack nodded, accepting the apology with characteristic grace. "We all want what's best for Emily and Lily. That's common ground we can build on." Richard stood up slowly, straightening his suit jacket. "I should let you all get some rest. But Emily, may I come back tomorrow? Perhaps bring some of those picture books Lily used to love when she was smaller?" "She'd like that," Emily smiled softly. "She loves story time." After Richard left, the room felt lighter somehow, as if a heavy cloud had finally lifted. Emily turned to Jack, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying, for being strong when I couldn't be, for showing my father what real dignity looks like." Before Jack could respond, Emily wrapped her arms around him in a tight embrace. He could feel her tears soaking into his shirt, but these weren't tears of sadness or fear anymore. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. The morning sun filtered through the hospital window, casting a gentle glow across Lily's sleeping face. She looked better already, her cheeks showing hints of their usual rosy color. Emily sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her daughter's peaceful breathing while Jack brought them both coffee from the cafeteria. "Here," Jack said softly, handing Emily a steaming cup. "It's not Miller's Diner coffee, but it'll do." Emily smiled, accepting the cup with both hands. "Anything's better than what I've been drinking the past few days." Jack pulled up the other chair next to her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The quiet of the early morning wrapped around them like a comfortable blanket, broken only by the soft beeping of monitors and distant hospital sounds. "Sarah's coming by later with some of Lily's favorite books," Jack mentioned, taking a sip of his coffee. "She's been worried sick about both of you." Emily's eyes grew misty. "That girl of yours, she's something special, Jack. The way she's embraced Lily, embraced me." She trailed off, emotion catching in her throat. "She gets that from her mother," Jack said quietly. "Claire always had room in her heart for everyone." Emily turned to look at him. Really look at him. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, the gentle creases around his eyes that deepened when he smiled. "Tell me about her," she asked softly. Jack was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Claire was sunshine. That's the best way I can describe her. Even when I came back from deployment all twisted up inside, she knew how to reach me. She'd sit with me during the rough nights, never pushing, just being there." Emily reached over and took his hand. "Like you did for me." "I guess some things come full circle," Jack admitted. "When Claire died, I thought that was it for me. Thought I'd just focus on raising Sarah and keep my heart locked up tight where it couldn't get hurt again." "I know that feeling," Emily whispered. "After Lily's father left, after my family turned their backs on us, I built walls so high I could barely see over them myself." Jack squeezed her hand gently. "But walls have a way of crumbling when you least expect it." "They sure do," Emily agreed, a small smile playing at her lips. "Who would have thought a grumpy veteran defending my honor at a diner would be the one to start the demolition?" "Grumpy?" Jack pretended to be offended. "I prefer to think of myself as stoically concerned." Their quiet laughter filled the room, and Emily felt something shift in her chest, like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. She turned in her chair to face him fully. "Jack Turner," she said, her voice tender but firm. "I need to tell you something." He met her gaze steadily, those kind eyes that had seen so much pain yet still held so much warmth. "I'm listening. When we first met, I was so caught up in my own pride, my own hurt, that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. I thought accepting help meant admitting defeat. I thought needing someone meant I was weak." Jack started to speak, but Emily placed a finger gently on his lips. "Let me finish. These past few months, watching you with Lily, seeing how you and Sarah have brought so much light into our lives, it's taught me something important. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let someone else in." She took a deep breath, her hand finding its way back to his. "I pushed you away because I was scared. Scared of needing you. Scared of wanting you. Scared of loving you. But sitting here now, after everything we've been through, I'm more scared of not having you in my life." Jack's eyes softened, and he brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Emily Hayes, are you trying to tell me something?" She laughed softly, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm trying to tell you I love you, you impossible man. And not because you helped me, or because you've been there for Lily, or because you stood up to my father. I love you because you're you. Because you repair old radios with the same care you mend broken hearts. Because you see the good in people even when they can't see it in themselves." Jack's free hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb gently brushing away a tear that had escaped. "I love you too," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "Have for a while now." "Really?" Emily's smile was radiant despite her tears. "Even when I was being stubborn and difficult?" "Especially then," Jack chuckled. "Reminded me of someone else I know who's equally stubborn." Emily leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. I was so wrong about so many things, Jack. But most of all, I was wrong about you. You were never my charity, Jack. You were my answer. The autumn days melted into a comfortable rhythm as Jack and Emily's families naturally gravitated toward each other. What started as occasional shared meals evolved into daily rituals that felt as natural as breathing. One evening, Sarah and Lily sprawled across the living room floor of Jack's house, textbooks scattered around them. The smell of Emily's chicken pot pie wafted from the kitchen where she worked alongside Jack, their movements in perfect sync as they prepared dinner. Need any help with that math problem? Jack called out to the girls, noticing Lily's furrowed brow as she stared at her worksheet. I got it, Uncle Jack, Lily replied, her face brightening as Sarah leaned over to point something out. The term Uncle Jack had slipped out naturally a few weeks ago, and it warmed his heart every time he heard it. Emily bumped Jack's hip playfully with her own as she reached for the pepper. Let Sarah handle it. She's turning into quite the tutor. Just like her mother, Jack said softly, then caught himself. But Emily's hand found his, squeezing gently. She understood. There was no jealousy, no competition with the past, just acceptance and love. The kitchen timer chimed, and Emily pulled out the golden brown pie while Jack tossed the salad. Their evening routine had become so seamless, it was hard to remember how they'd managed before. Girls, dinner's ready, Emily called out, and the sound of scrambling feet and giggling filled the house. Can we eat in the den tonight? Sarah asked, already knowing the answer but trying anyway. We're in the middle of this really good movie. Nice try, Jack chuckled. Table time is family time. They gathered around the old oak table, passing dishes and sharing stories about their day. Lily proudly showed off her science test score, while Sarah dramatically recounted a mishap during band practice. After dinner, the girls insisted on doing the dishes together, a new development that both parents suspected had more to do with their ongoing private conversations than actual helpfulness. Still, neither complained about the help. Emily wiped down the counters while Jack packed leftover pie for tomorrow's lunches. The comfortable silence between them spoke volumes about how far they'd come. You know, Emily said thoughtfully, I never thought I'd have this again. A real family dinner, I mean, after everything with my parents. Jack nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. I know. After Marie passed, I thought that was it. Just me and Sarah getting by. They worked together to put away the cleaning supplies, their movements practiced and familiar. The sound of the girls' laughter drifted in from the kitchen, punctuated by the clink of dishes. The next morning, Emily arrived early with fresh bagels, using her key to let herself in. Another recent development that felt surprisingly right. She found Jack in his study, going through old papers. Morning, she said softly, noticing the contemplative look on his face. He held a familiar silver frame in his hands, the one that had sat on his desk for years, containing a photo of Marie. Jack looked up, offering a gentle smile. Morning. Just doing some organizing. Emily set the bagels down and moved closer, but gave him space. She'd learned to read his moods, to know when to step in and when to hang back. Marie would have loved you, Jack said suddenly, his voice steady and sure. She always said Sarah needed a sister. Emily's eyes welled up, but she smiled. I wish I could have known her. Jack stood, still holding the frame. With careful movements, he opened his desk drawer and gently placed the photo inside. It wasn't hiding or forgetting. It was making room for the present while honoring the past. The girls want to go camping next weekend, he said, turning to Emily. Sarah's been teaching Lily about constellations. Oh no, Emily laughed, grateful for his openness and the easy way he included her in future plans. Last time Lily went camping in the backyard, she was convinced every cricket was a bear. Good thing she'll have her big sister to protect her then, Jack replied, pulling Emily close. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by thundering footsteps on the stairs as Sarah and Lily raced down, drawn by the smell of breakfast. Bagels! Lily cheered, while Sarah immediately began debating the merits of different cream cheese flavors. The morning chaos commenced, spreading cream cheese, finding missing homework, packing lunches. Emily checked Lily's backpack, while Jack helped Sarah locate her missing band permission slip. They moved around each other with the ease of a long-established family, each knowing their role in the morning dance. Dad, can Emily help me with my history project tonight? Sarah asked, as she stuffed books into her bag. It's about the Civil War. And she knows everything about it. Of course, Emily answered before Jack could, then caught herself. I mean, if that's okay with your dad. Jack just smiled, loving how naturally they all fit together. Sounds perfect. I'll grab pizza on the way home. Can we get extra pepperoni? Lily piped up, her face hopeful. Only if you eat your vegetables at lunch, Emily countered, shooting Jack a knowing look. They developed a united front in parenting, supporting each other's decisions without undermining either's authority. As they herded the girls out to their respective cars, Emily taking Lily to elementary school while Jack dropped Sarah at the middle school, Jack caught Emily's hand for a moment. You'll come back after work? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Always, she replied simply, and that one word carried the weight of 1,000 promises. Jack watched them drive away, thinking about the photo now resting in his drawer. It felt right, not an ending, but a continuation. A new chapter in a story that had more love, not less. Marie would always be part of their family's foundation, but now they were building something new together, something beautiful and unexpected and real. The morning sun caught the frost on the grass, making everything sparkle. Jack breathed in the crisp autumn air, feeling truly at peace. His heart was full, not despite his past, but because of it. Every step of his journey had led him here, to this moment, to this blended family that felt more right than he ever could have imagined. He turned back to the house, ready to start his day, knowing that tonight would bring more shared meals, more homework help, more laughter, and more love. The future stretched out before him, bright with possibility, and for the first time in years, he was eager to embrace it fully. The autumn evening wrapped around them like a warm blanket as Jack and Emily walked home from the diner, their fingers intertwined. Sarah and Lily skipped ahead, their laughter echoing through the quiet streets of their small Ohio town. The streetlights cast gentle shadows on the sidewalk, and fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet. Emily squeezed Jack's hand, her eyes misty with reflection. You know, I never thought I'd be here, she said softly. After everything that happened with my family, I was so determined to prove I could do it all alone. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Pride can be a heavy burden to carry, he replied, thinking back to those first days at the diner when he'd seen her struggling. I was the same way after Mary passed. Thought I had to be strong for Sarah. Never let anyone see me stumble. Look how far we've come, Emily mused, watching their daughters ahead. Sarah had her arm around Lily's shoulders, showing her something on her phone that made them both burst into giggles. From me lying about those checks from my father to you thinking I was trying to con you, Jack chuckled, the memory no longer carrying any sting. And you accusing me of offering charity when all I wanted was to help someone who reminded me so much of myself. They paused at the corner, waiting for the girls to return to them. Emily leaned her head against Jack's shoulder, her voice thick with emotion. You know what I realized in that hospital room with Lily? All those years I spent pushing people away, I wasn't protecting myself. I was just making sure I stayed broken. Sometimes we need to break before we can heal properly, Jack said, pulling her closer. Like setting a bone that didn't heal right the first time. Sarah and Lily circled back, their cheeks pink from the crisp air. Mom, can Sarah show me how to braid my hair like hers tomorrow? Lily asked, her eyes bright with hope. Of course, sweetheart. Emily smiled, her heart warming at how naturally the girls had bonded. If Sarah has time before school, I always have time for my favorite little sister. Sarah winked, making Lily beam with joy. They continued walking, the girls once again dancing ahead under the streetlights. Jack felt Emily's hand trembling slightly in his and looked down at her. What's on your mind? I was just thinking about that day at the fall festival, she said. When Lily fell asleep in your arms, and I saw how naturally you held her. It scared me then, how right it felt, how much I wanted that to be our normal. And now? Jack asked, his voice gentle. Now, I understand that letting people in doesn't make you weak, Emily replied. It takes more strength to trust than to hide. They reached the old lamppost at the corner of Maple and Pine, its light casting a warm glow around them. The girls had stopped a few feet ahead, pretending to be absorbed in Sarah's phone but stealing obvious glances their way. You know what else I learned? Emily asked, turning to face Jack. Her eyes sparkled in the lamplight. What's that? That Sometimes the best things in life come disguised as challenges. She reached up, touching his cheek softly.
Like a grumpy veteran defending a stubborn waitress from a rude customer.
Jack laughed, the sound rich and warm. Who are you calling grumpy? Must be talking about someone else, Emily teased, her smile radiant. She rose on her tiptoes, pressing her lips gently against his. The kiss was sweet and tender, filled with the promise of more tomorrows. From a few feet away, they heard poorly suppressed giggles and the distinct sound of Sarah whispering,
"Oh my gosh, they're so cute,"
followed by Lily's delighted,
"Ew."
Emily pulled back, laughing against Jack's chest as he wrapped his arms around her. The moment was perfect, not because everything was fixed or because all their wounds were healed, but because they had chosen to heal together, to build something new from the broken pieces of their past. The lamppost continued to shine above them, a silent witness to their journey from strangers to family, from broken to healing, from alone to together. Sarah and Lily's continued giggling provided the perfect soundtrack to this moment of pure, simple joy. The spring sun painted warmth across the park's emerald grass, where checkered blankets spread out like patchwork beneath the shade of an old oak tree. Jack watched as Sarah helped Lily arrange sandwich quarters on paper plates, their heads bent together in concentration. Emily sat cross-legged beside him, her honey-brown hair catching golden highlights in the afternoon light. "More lemonade?" she asked, holding up the mason jar they'd filled that morning. "Please." Jack held out his cup, savoring how ordinary moments like these had become extraordinary treasures. The ice clinked against glass as Emily poured, her free hand absently straightening the edge of their picnic blanket. Lily's voice carried across the grass. "Sarah, look, the ducks are back." Both girls jumped up, ready to investigate the pond's newest visitors. "Don't get too close to the water," Emily called after them, maternal instinct coloring her voice. Jack smiled, remembering how many times he'd said those exact words to Sarah at that age. A familiar car pulled into the parking lot beyond their picnic spot. Emily's breath caught slightly as she recognized it. Her father's silver Mercedes, pristine as always, stood out among the everyday vehicles around it. "You okay?" Jack asked softly, covering her hand with his. Emily nodded, though her shoulders tensed. "Yes, just still getting used to this." Richard Hayes emerged from his car, looking less imposing in casual clothes than his usual business suits. He carried a wrapped package, his steps hesitant as he approached their picnic spot. Jack noticed how his father-in-law's usually perfect posture seemed uncertain, as if he was still learning how to navigate this new role of humble grandfather. "Grandpa!" Lily spotted him first, breaking into a run across the grass. Sarah followed more slowly, offering a polite wave. The changes of the past months showed in how Richard's face softened at Lily's greeting, his arms opening to catch her in a hug that would have been unthinkable last fall. "I brought something for our picnic," Richard said, holding out the package. Inside was an elaborate cake from the fancy bakery across town, the kind Emily used to have at her childhood birthday parties. "Dad, you didn't have to," Emily started, but Richard shook his head. "I wanted to," he said simply. The words carried weight beyond the cake, speaking to all the moments he'd missed, all the bridges he was trying to rebuild. Jack shifted over, making room on the blanket. "Have a seat, Richard. We've got plenty of food." The initial awkwardness hung in the air like morning fog, but Lily's innocent chatter began to burn it away. She insisted on showing her grandfather the duck family, tugging at his hand until he had no choice but to follow. "Careful by the water," Richard called out automatically, then shared a surprised look with Emily at how parental he'd sounded. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Sarah helped distribute the food, handling the situation with her usual grace.
"Mr. Hayes, would you like turkey or ham?" Emily made both."
The slip felt natural now, though Sarah still caught herself sometimes. Emily's eyes glistened at the word mom, but she pretended to be busy arranging napkins. Richard accepted a turkey sandwich, watching as Lily demonstrated her new cartwheel skills in the grass. "She's getting so big," he said quietly. "I've missed so much." "There's still time," Jack offered, his voice gentle but firm. "That's what second chances are for." Emily leaned against Jack's shoulder, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Remember when you told me that needing people isn't weakness?" she whispered. "Still true," he murmured back. The afternoon unfolded like a flower opening to the sun. Richard slowly relaxed. sharing stories from Emily's childhood that had Sarah and Lily giggling. Even Emily laughed at some of them, the bitterness of the past softening in the warmth of the present. When Lily convinced her grandfather to join her in making daisy chains, Emily pressed her face into Jack's shoulder to hide happy tears. Jack wrapped an arm around her, his heart full at the sight of Richard Hayes, former titan of industry, sitting cross-legged in the grass while his granddaughter crowned him with flowers. Sarah taught Lily how to blow dandelion seeds, their wishes carried away on the spring breeze. "What did you wish for?" Lily asked her grandfather. Richard looked at his daughter, at the family she'd built from broken pieces and brave choices. "Nothing," he said honestly. "I already have everything I need right here." The afternoon light began to soften, painting everything in gentle gold. Jack watched their blended family, Sarah helping Lily pack up her toys, Richard and Emily talking quietly by the picnic basket, their body language easier than it had been in years. Love had done this, he realized. Not the easy kind that comes with perfect circumstances, but the harder kind that chooses to stay when things get messy. Emily returned to his side, slipping her hand into his. Together they watched their children play, their laughter carrying across the park like music. The moment felt complete. Not because everything was perfect, but because they'd learned that perfect wasn't the point. Jack squeezed Emily's hand, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. From that first night at the diner, through pride and misunderstandings, past hurt and healing, to this moment of peace. He'd learned that character wasn't tested in comfort, it was tested in love. In the courage to try again, to forgive, to let people in despite the risk of pain. The spring breeze carried the scent of new flowers and fresh starts. Their family had been forged in the fire of challenges, but had emerged stronger for it. As the sun painted the sky in pastel promises, Jack held Emily close, watching their children chase the last rays of daylight across the grass. Richard stood nearby, his usual rigid posture relaxed, a daisy chain still crooked on his head. This was what healing looked like, not the absence of scars, but the presence of love strong enough to bridge them. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Turner, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.